Hey guys, welcome to Pop Culture Curiosities, a podcast where me and Gabe tell each other and others stories from pop culture history that just fascinate us. We usually throw in our own stories from set life as well. Gabe did the research. You did the research this week, so...
I'd like to think so. A lot of copy and pasting. Plagiarism has run rampant on the podcast.
No, you cite your sources. That's how sources work. You cite some of your sources.
Do you want AMA or MPA? Wikipedia. And my brain.
Yeah.
For a lot of it.
That's the sources. We're
yes.
Good. What year are we going back to?
We're going back to 2013,
right,
I think.
Let's see if I can... Flash warning for anybody.
Oh. Fuck.
I mean, not the naked and afraid kind of flash. The other kind of... Let's see. What?
Someone's gonna...
Come on.
Spencer's like, you're bumping your mic.
I'm sorry, Spencer. I was driving the Tardis so well before everything broke down.
Yeah, we tried recording this before, but unfortunately things went wrong, and luckily, yay, we're fixed, everyth's fine, yay! We're traveling into 2013, I think. 2013, I think. Yeah.
Alright, and... Nice, okay.
Yay.
2013. I don't remember. What does the fox say in 2013? That might have been 2012.
Ding, 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 ding,
Ding, ding, ding, ding, ding, ding, ding. That was a weird time to be alive.
But it was so much fun.
It was way more like... We always used to talk about, like, back in the day, like, oh, the 80s were so much simpler times. No, 2013 was a simpler time. We were all just like, phew, dodge that whole 2012 ending the world bullet,
the
and
end
then
of the Mayan calendar.
Yep, we dodged that bullet, and now it's all looking up from here.
Cut to 7 years later.
Narrator's voice, it did not go all up from there.
It actually went down from there.
Yeah. But anyway, we're in 2013.
Yay.
I see that we are on a beach. And I'm told that there are going to be people without clothes, so I'm just going to make sure the TARDIS has, for their privacy, the blur effects, like the in real life TV style blur effects.
Exactly. So it's like that one episode where the dog where I believe it was when Clara was there, and she's like, "Oh, doctor, why are you not wearing clothes?" And then he's like, "Oh, it's respectful." But luckily, the TARDIS has this convenient button where it makes it look like we're wearing clothes. It's fine.
It's fine.
I swear that's an episode.
Oh, I believe it. There's been weirder things that have happened on Doctor Who.
Oh, and I think Matt Smith's Doctor is the Doctor during 2013, so it's very relevant for right now.
Perfect. Is that your favorite Doctor?
Actually, David Tennant is my favorite Doctor.
David Tennant's my favorite. I think he's a lot of people's favorite.
He was also my first, and usually your first Doctor is your favorite Doctor.
My first Doctor was Christopher Eccleston, who was my favorite for a very long time. I still think he's a very, very good Doctor, and I wish he had been on more than one season, but we'll have to do Doctor Who in future. Probably more than one episode, because Doctor Who is a big rabbit hole.
Oh gosh, it's a big wibbly bibbly. I don't know if I can quote it directly.
Oh yeah,
wibbly wobbly timey wimey stuff.
Yeah, I said that to somebody. I said wibbly wobbly timey wimey stuff, and they said, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, "Oh no." Oh, I'm on foreign land.
They've never been to a con before.
No.
Science fiction is not. They don't understand.
But anyway.
Anyway, back to Naked and Afraid. Well, According to Wikipedia, which is one of my sources, Naked and Afraid is an American reality series that airs on the Discovery Channel. Each episode chronicles the lives of two survivalists who meet for the first time naked and are given the task of surviving in the wilderness for 21 days. Sometimes there are 3 or 4-person challenges that are called tribe challenges. Each survivalist is allowed one helpful item, such as a machete or fire starter. After they meet in the assigned locale, the partners must build a shelter and find water and food. The events of each couple's journey play out in a single episode. Partners strip down and meet each other. They are provided with rough, cross-body satchels containing a personal diary camera for use when the camera crew is not there at night, because the camera crew is there from 9 to 5 and they are gone, and they are like maybe 15 minutes to an hour away. I don't even know if 15 minutes, but they are gone and all that.
So they just peace. They're just like, bye. Good luck with that whole be naked in the wilderness thing.
Pretty much. I can't imagine surviving in Africa because it's like all you have is a boma, maybe a sharp object, and then you're surrounded by lions and
oh wow,
not bears, lions and elephants and rhinoceri.
Lions and tigers and bears. Go see our Wizard of Oz podcast episode.
Yes, lions and tigers. Plug.
Our microphones are back. Hi, Spencer.
Hi, Spencer.
Everything's fine, Spencer.
Our cameras aren't working, Spencer.
We just unfreeze. We're just both sobbing. Yes!
Okay. Be working. Okay. Yes. They wear identical Bead, which is a microphone with a that connects to a wireless radio transmitter hidden in the.
I'm so sorry.
It's. We're just gonna blame Perry temporarily.
Okay, so Africa.
Yes, most of the time the survivalists are in Africa for the survival challenges. Usually they go all around the world, but usually there are many spots in Africa. I believe at least half of the XL challenges have occurred in Africa. Okay. So I'm sure someone's like, well, actually, and I'm like, well, a majority of the XL challenges have happened there, but I think that's where they have the most clearance to do things, and they're like, oh, permits out at the wazoo for traveling in Africa, and gotta watch out for those rhinoceri and elephants and lions, but not tigers and bears. I don't think anyone's encountered a tiger before, so that's good. Mainly like leopards and stuff and jaguars.
For one second, my brain thought you were saying like ever in the history of humanity. Like we don't even know that tigers are real, guys. We haven't even seen them.
Yeah, Tiger King, that was a fantasy.
Oh God, a fever dream.
A fever dream.
A nightmare.
Oh gosh. And I think I was talking about, they have the necklace where they have the recording device and it's attached to the satchels that they have where it's connected to a mic pack in their bag and whatnot. And then I discuss how on the Wikipedia page they talk about how Alison Teal was given an emergency tampon during her challenge because she was having excessive period cramps during that time, and so they're like, here's a little comfort.
As a treat.
Exactly. And she talks about how when the last time she had cramps this bad, she had to go to the hospital. So she was just really worried. And so that was a real kind of valley in her experience. While most of the time she was there, she was, doing really good in the challenge. She had an 8.0 PSR, primitive survival rating going in, and she was finding food. She found clothes for herself and her partner. She was weaving stuff. She was good to go. And her partner was if you watch Naked and Afraid, he's I'm a big buff dude and I'm going to make Mother Nature my B word kind of thing. He didn't necessarily, I don't think he said that, but that was kind of his kind of
tone.
Yeah. Or that was kind of his character, quote unquote character that he was given. There's like the hippies, the military person, the expert hunter, all this, that, and the other. And so that was his like persona, or that was his edit, I should say. And
I said the first time we tried to film this, the first 2 times we tried to film this, and it died. That it reminded me of the bit that, and Spencer can look it up because I'm blanking on her name. I'm so sorry. There's a female comedian that has a song about how the time that NASA sent a woman to space for only either 6 or 8 days and gave her 100 tampons and said, "Is this enough?"
Rocket scientists, people. These are rocket scientists.
Yeah. Tough times. But anyway, Naked and Afraid.
Yes, Naked and Afraid. A team is allowed to tap out at any point during the 21-day challenge. If they do not tap out, they must arrive at the designated extraction point on the final day to be picked up by helicopter, plane, automobile, boat, or other vehicle suited for the environment. Viewers are updated throughout with statistics including how many days have passed, the time, and the temperature. Naked and Afraid computes and then updates the cast members' PSR, primitive survival rating, which is based on predictions and observations of survival fitness and skill, experience, and mental strengths. Before and after weight loss measurements are also revealed at the end of the episode.
Oh. We get that or they get that?
We get that.
Okay.
Usually it's so-and-so lost this amount of weight during the... Or usually it's only when they complete the challenge where it's like so-and-so lost this amount of weight during their challenge and their PSR rises to this amount. I think there are 2 instances where survivalists made it through the 21 days, but their PSR dropped.
Oh.
Which means that they had to be carried by their partner or they like got through by the skin of their teeth, because the first time is the episode called Double Jeopardy, which I believe is season 2 episode 1, where it's the first kind of 4-person challenge.
Okay.
It was like the tribe episode before it was tribes, because usually the survivalists know that there's a second set of survivalists, but in
Sorry, continue.
But in Double Jeopardy, it was kind of surprised where on day 11, they're like, oh, I think we should move to a different location. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Here, let's move. And the other group conveniently is like, let's move to a different location. And then one group is on a waterfall and the other group is at the bottom of the waterfall. And they're like, oh my gosh, other people. This is such a surprise. We didn't know.
We had no idea.
But then later on, it's like on day 11, the survivalists who make it to day 11 will merge at a specific merge point and then move on to a water source to build a shelter and continue on in the hopes of becoming America's next top survival person.
America's next top model. Can you imagine?
Oh gosh, I'm sure that. Well, I'm sure some of them have become models afterwards, and a lot of them are super fierce. You work it, everybody. And I know there are a few who, I don't know how, but there have been a few who during their challenge have had what looks like to be photo shoots. And I'm like, well, that's good. Well, you're surviving. You're able to have the ability to...
I don't look like I'm having a photo shoot when I'm like inside in the AC living the super cushy YouTuber life.
Well, and I guess some are like, oh, a professional photographer. Here, let's take some photos kind of thing. It's probably not like that. They're like, oh, let's give us a moment of brief respite as we're trying to survive in the wilderness.
Yeah.
During our 21-day challenge. But and all the or I shouldn't say all, but a lot of the survivalists are very down to earth and they're not typical reality star personalities.
Well, that's good.
A lot of them have Facebook Lives because there's the fans of Naked and Afraid in XL and the true fans of Naked and Afraid in XL pages. And a lot of the times the survivalists go on there, and I actually got to be on one of them. They were...
On the fans or on the true fans?
On the fans, I believe. Or one's public and one's private, and I believe the true fans is the public one.
Okay. I was just waiting for you to be like, oh yeah, I've been in the true fans like behind the scenes for years. And I'd be like, you got the real tea.
Shout out to all the moderators of both Facebook pages because they have to deal with a lot, especially now. I'm not going to say why because I'm bitter about it. But I got to be on one of the lives because they're like, oh, here, let's ask audience members to come in. And Tara, I believe, was in charge of a Facebook Live and invited me in with. And Tara, Jamie, and Chini were there, and you're just like, who are these individuals? But if you know, you know. And I felt so special, and I was kind of a dork, but I was able to move past it and ask a really good question. I was really happy because they answered it, and I was so happy.
Nice.
But first, I wanted to talk about the spin-offs of Naked and Afraid.
Okay.
And so the first one I'm going to talk about a tiny bit is called Foreign Exchange, which is the French/European version. It has one season and it's on Discovery Plus, and it's okay. But
I was gonna say the two that I know, because my mom has watched the show for a while. I think if she watches any of our episodes, it'll probably be this one. Because when it started back in 2013, we think we're here. She was like, "If you've seen this new show called Naked and Afraid, you can't stop watching it. It's like a train wreck." And then she just like,
Oh.
and then I told her that you were doing research on this episode, and she was like, "You watched Naked and Afraid?" But the two spin-offs that I knew about was Naked and Afraid of Love, because that sounds very silly. And then the other one that I knew about was Naked and Afraid XL, because that also sounds very, very silly. But then you told me there were a lot more.
Yeah, and I put them in a specific order because if I were to be like, oh yeah, there's this one, I'd be like, oh wait, which one am I talking about now? But yeah, I remember the 21st night of September. There was a weird, in the early 2010s, there was this weird like Naked revolution where there were just so many shows based around that, and Naked and Afraid was kind of like the pioneer of that. And there's like, it's mainly dating shows, but Naked and Afraid is like the first of its kind, and it's on its 15th season. I think there are still a few more episodes that need to air, but there's another spinoff going on right now. But as I said, Foreign Exchange was the first one. It has only one season. It's kind of the French version. It's okay. I've seen a little bit of it. It's on Discovery Plus if anyone wants to check it out. There's also Largados y Pelados, which is the Brazilian version of the show, and it finished its second season, and I know a lot of the survivalists from there have been campaigning like, we want an XL challenge too. And I'm just like, yes, Discovery, if you're listening, please give the Largados y Pelados survivalists a chance at 40 days. And I think there was, I call shade, because there was one episode called Lost in Translation, which I believe is season 13 or 14. It's the last episode of that season, I believe 13. And they bring in a survivalist from Largados y Pelados. And, you know, people in Brazil speak Portuguese. Mm-hmm. And then they bring in an American who only speaks English.
Oh, no.
Hence the name of the title, Lost in Translation.
I see.
So they basically can't understand each other.
Oh.
And there's some drama that comes from that, but apparently they're really good friends because
that's good.
They post about each other on their socials. And I think in Brazil, on Discovery Brazil, they recently aired the episode, so it's getting a lot of hype. And It seems that Diogo is the survivalist name from Largados y Pelados. He has a good friendship with his partner Nikki, so
that's good.
That's good. But it's really interesting to see the drama from that. And so I'm just like, give the Brazilian survivalists an XL challenge. And then the next one is Supervivencia al Desnudo, which is the Latin American version, which has had one season so far and hopefully a second one. And they should also get their chance at a 40-day challenge because they're very capable too.
Woo.
And the way that Largados y Pelados and Supervivencia al Desnudo works is, instead of having 2 survivalists and 1 episode, they have 5 sets of survivalists and 7 episodes. So you basically, for seasons 1 and 2 of Largados y Pelados and season 1 of Supervivencia al Desnudo, you follow 10 survivalists for a 21-day challenge. And that's kind of similar to the setup of Naked and Afraid XL, where they have 12 survivalists and like 4 groups of 3. But here it's 5 sets of 2 and it's 21 days and whatnot.
So, as far as, like, the, let's say, culture around the show, like, because Naked and Afraid pretty much see themselves as, like, actual, like, survivalists. Like, I know there are some people who are like, I'm into Naked and Afraid, but for the survivalist stuff, guys. Not for the naked part.
I'm mainly there to see who makes it to the end and, like, what tropes are there and, like, how, or it's like, if we're 30 minutes in and we're on day 4, what will that mean, kind of thing. And I'm very interested, like, the editing, like, who's this person, how they're edited, are they really like that in real life? Probably not, because I have like a controversial survivalist section that I will talk about later. That'll be interesting, but just the reality show aspect of it, because despite the fact that it's a survival show, they don't really teach the audience isn't told about the survival aspect. They're maybe told how, like, what kind of shelter is being built or what kind of trap is being built, but it's not like, I use this knot when I do this. I use this to put this together.
It's not like a Zoom segment where it's just like, we had this tip sent in by, you know, so and so, and we're like, you know, like, I don't know. Zoom never did survivalist stuff, but I don't know. Just like one of those segments where it's like, and now I'm going to show you how to make this. Like,
Exactly.
It wasn't like an Alton Brown Good Eats. There we go. Use that one, Spencer. It wasn't like an Alton Brown Good Eats. You know, like Alton Brown being like, oh, I'm going to show you how to make this thing with science. It's like, no, let's just see how they do.
Exactly. And it's like, I'm sure some audience members are like, I would like to know how to make a fish basket. It's like, what knot do I use with the sticks? How, or what way should I wrap they just kind of show it happening. And some people might need like a B, and C, because I'm a visual learner, but I'm looking and I'm just like, I don't think I would be able to replicate this because I don't know how to tie the initial sticks together. And then it's like, how do you weave cordage? Or it's like, you must braid it, but it's like, can we break that down a little bit? But it's all about drama for Naked and Afraid, which is why certain survivalists come back several times, even though they tap almost every time they're there, or half the times they're there, or med tap most of the times they're there. And also, please don't send hate to any of the survivalists. And I'm also giving my interpretations of events that are happening. I'm being a little shady, but I'm.
Okay.
And we're back.
All right. So let's keep on keeping on. Sorry, Spencer. We genuinely have no idea what's wrong.
Sorry, Spencer.
So where were we?
I was throwing light shade at some of the survivalists because they have brought back some survivalists who have tapped out, where people are on 4 to 6 challenges and they've tapped on a good portion of them. And I was just saying, I was just being a little shady. It's mainly on the producers for bringing these individuals back. They are just trying their best, and good for them for trying to survive as many days.
I couldn't do it. I'm really sensitive to the cold. Like I was telling you, I have like Raynaud's syndrome, or, you know, which just means your blood circulates a little bit slowly, and so you get really cold easily. So like I couldn't do it. I would be like, I'm out. I wouldn't go in the first place. I think I'd be like, I'm fine, you know?
Yeah, I have no survival skills. When I was talking to Tara, Jamie, and Chini, I was like, so can you start out with a negative score? Because that would be my score. So kudos to everyone who tries this out. You're all amazing. But I still also want to be a little shady. Sorry.
How dare you?
I'm sorry. People on Reddit do it all the time. At least you can see my face.
Yes.
But yeah, a lot of times producers bring back kind of the more controversial individuals many times. And sometimes they have to tap for certain reasons, whether it be mental, physical. There's one individual that's notorious for being med tapped, I think, 3 or 4 out of her 6 challenges.
Oh, wow.
So it's just like, oh no. And so going back to the 9 spin-offs, we talked about Foreign Exchange, Largados y Pelados, Supervivencia al Desnudo, also Largados y Pelados, and Supervivencia al Desnudo. They all deserve their XL challenges. Let those survivalists try their best. And then there's Naked and Afraid XL, which is basically a play on the Roman numeral of XL, which is 40, and it's kind of a bigger Naked and Afraid challenge. And that's basically when you have usually 12 survivalists. They usually start in 4 groups of 3, and they are tasked with surviving 40 days. And usually there's a point where everyone kind of merges together to try to survive, and you get some tap outs here and there. And season 2 is notorious for season 2 of Naked and Afraid XL is notorious for having, I believe, 8 out of the 12 survivalists tapping, and I think 5 or 6 of them, or 4 to 6 of them, were tapped because of bad fruit. It was basically contaminated by monkey feces.
Ew.
And Jake Nodar, who's a very prominent figure of Naked and Afraid, has apparently a funny quote where he goes, "Don't eat the fruit."
One time I was at side note, when I was a kid, I was at camp, and they didn't cook the chicken. It was raw. It was like battered, but it was completely like raw in the middle. And so I just have this vivid memory of our youth pastor's wife yelling, "Don't eat the chicken! Don't eat the chicken!" And that's what it made me think of.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, that season, it was just like, ooh, because, you know, a bunch of people tapped out during that challenge. A couple people have had redemptions from that, but it's just like, oh. And apparently Jake got jaundice while he was there, so he turned yellow. He was one of the only people who managed to stay after the first initial, like, oh, this is contaminated, I'm ill. And he's like, okay, I can stay, and then jaundice. And
God.
so we only saw him 2 times after that, unfortunately. But everyone's like, bring Jake back. And he's like, guys, no, I'm not doing this anymore.
Like, I can't do this anymore, you guys.
Yeah, some individuals have severe physical issues after the show, and some mental
I can imagine, yeah.
Not or mental health concerns after the show. Yeah, is what I should say. And two spinoffs that kind of go hand in hand are Naked and Afraid Alone and Naked and Afraid Solo, because Naked and Afraid kind of wanted to capitalize on the popularity of Alone, which is a kind of a survival challenge where it's basically whoever can last the longest wins, but they're clothed and they have, I think, 10 survival items that they have, and they have to survive in a cold, dreary wilderness for as long as they can. And so Naked and Afraid Alone and Naked and Afraid Solo is just, you have 8 to 12 survivalists, and they're basically by themselves the entire time. Because usually, sometimes during a challenge, someone taps out early, and you basically have to complete it alone. But in Alone and Solo, it's just, you're alone, it's fine.
But they're not naked.
They are naked.
Oh, sorry. You're saying it was a take on another thing.
Yes, okay. Yes. On regular Alone on History Channel, they're clothed and have a lot more survival items, and on Naked and Afraid Alone, they're by themselves, and with like, I believe they're given maybe 3 or 4 survival items, and then they kind of are in a location and they have to survive. And on Naked and Afraid Alone, it was 1 episode per person, but for Naked and Afraid Solo, it was 8 survivalists that they kind of jump back and forth from. But there was a lot of controversy over the editing of Naked and Afraid Solo, because I believe someone clocked it that pretty much all the survivalists had maybe 32 minutes of screen time for the 8 episodes. And they also had it to where the first episode it showed all of these survivalists getting inserted, but it only focused on 4 survivalists that episode. And then the next, it focused on 2 from the previous episode, but then 2 other survivalists. And then the episode after that focused on 3 survivalists that we were introduced to, and then the last 2 that we haven't seen for the whole time. And they have this interesting mechanic where they show, I believe it was in Central America, South America, and Africa, where all the survivalists were located, and they would be like, Africa, zoom out Ecuador, or zoom out Mexico, or zoom out this place in South Africa. And it took up a lot of screen time, and there were a lot of commercials, and the survivalists were not happy about it. And that was my question to Tara, Jamie, and Chini, because they were all on Naked and Afraid Alone, and I was like, what do you think of the editing? And then, or I can speak about that after I talk about the rest of the spinoffs, but they were not happy, to say the least. And another kind of spinoff is called Naked and Afraid Savage, where on XL season 4, I believe, they kind of brought in like an expert survivalist that's going in for redemption for an XL challenge, and it's basically his solo 21-day journey before mixing in with the rest of the group. And if you watch Naked and Afraid, that's Matt Wright, and everyone loves Matt Wright. He's called the GOAT, greatest of all time, of Naked and Afraid. Nice. Because I think he's one of the most successful hunters of the show. He's very skilled. He's a really good instructor, teacher. He's teaching all the survivalists how to survive and all that jazz. And so it follows him during his 21, or during the first 21 days of his XL challenge, because on XL3 he got a a flesh-eating bacteria in his
Oh,
toe
no.
and had to be med-tapped from the challenge because
Oh, no.
he was going to lose his foot, I believe is what he said. He was going to lose his foot if he wasn't tapped immediately.
So I kind of always assumed this was like Survivor, where, you know, it's like, oh, well, like, we're not actually, like, out in the wilderness. Like, oh, they are, though.
They are out in the wilderness and they're alone, but they're not as alone as you think. There have been a few times where I remember on the there's literally an episode called OK Boomer where apparently they were looking for someone and the I think search and rescue a helicopter was flying over and basically saw the two survivalists that were there like during the night. So the survivalists are like, yeah, they just saw two people just sitting there naked. It's fine.
It's fine, guys. It's fine.
And then on the Stomping Grounds episode, which I discuss later because one of the survivalists wrote a blog about it, she talks about there were border jumpers that ran across a riverbed near where she and her partner were camping. And so it's just like, oh, they're it's not as alone as you think, but they're like out there by themselves at night. And so
Oh, wow.
it's like if they need help, then they have to wait a little bit. So don't get too injured.
Don't get too injured.
And then for XL5, Naked and Afraid Savage followed Laura and Jeff because they were doing a 60-day challenge, the first in Naked and Afraid history. And so 20 days before everyone else was inserted for the XL challenge, they were inserted in a different location, and Naked and Afraid Savage it chronicled their first 20 days in the challenge before they were a part of like the main 40-day challenge with everyone else.
Gotcha.
And it's like a web series kind of thing. And it's on Discovery Plus as well, but it was mainly a web series where it's just like, oh, by the way, this is what they were doing, but let's focus on everyone else.
Okay.
And finally, we have there's two more. Sorry. We have Naked and Afraid of Love coming up next, which is a very controversial spin-off series.
I'm super excited. This is my favorite part of this. I think, like, everything you said has been super interesting, but I didn't know that this existed until you told me, I think. Or no, my mom told me. Either you or my mom told me. I can't remember. One of you told me, and I was like, what? Sorry, Spencer. I was like, what?
Yes, because it's interesting because there is a dating show called Dating Naked where it's like the first season is like singles or like a pair of singles meet and then there's like two other people and you get to choose, but then later seasons you just follow two singles throughout the entire season kind of thing where each episode of the first season is like a one-off episode, like you don't see those singles again, but in season 2 and 3 there are two individuals you follow throughout the whole series. But
okay.
It's a similar premise, but this time in Naked and Afraid of Love you have 16 singles, 8 men and 8 individuals who identify as male and 8 individuals who identify as female, I believe. I do not know, there have been no updates, please don't come for me, who are inserted or they're inserted in pairs in different areas of this island paradise. And basically they go on quote unquote dates and they interact with one another and they have the whole produced, oh, there aren't that many resources here, let's go to this other location nearby, oh look, more singles, how did this happen? And they keep merging until finally it's all the singles in one place so they can like date and figure out who they like, who they don't like. And let me tell you, the Naked and Afraid survivalists were not happy about this because they're like, this is a mockery of Naked and Afraid. We're out there, we're surviving, and then you have these individuals there just to date one another. And
well, yeah, because they don't sound like they're surviving at all.
Yeah, and apparently on Naked and Afraid of Love, they kind of were surviving out there. The island they were at had more food in it, but maybe some people got mattresses, I don't know, but maybe they had more creature comforts, but they were like out there. They maybe had a few, they were able to like freshen up a bit, but they were still out there. And the interesting fact is there have been 2 survivalists from Naked and Afraid of Love who have done Naked and Afraid challenges.
Oh.
And both of them made made it to 21 days. There's Michael and Rachel. And Michael, on his challenge, he was on a 3-person challenge. And it was basically him like carrying the other two, it seemed, based on the edit, where he was going out looking for food. He was a go-getter. He was helping build a shelter. But there was some drama where for some reason they didn't build their fire near their shelter, and he's just like I don't really want to cuddle because it gets too hot. And one of his partners is like, well, I get really, really cold at night and I need heat. And he's like, but I don't want to cuddle. But yeah, and so there was a lot going on with that. And then Rachel was in actually the most recent episode of Naked and Afraid, and the title is called Don't Cry for Me, Argentina. And guess where she is? She's in Argentina. And
if she was in like Peru, I would have been really confused.
Yeah, I haven't seen the episode, but apparently she cries a lot, I think.
Same.
But she makes it through. She's very, very tough. And, hey, Naked and Afraid of Love has a 100% success rate with Naked and Afraid challenges. So
wait, really?
Well, I mean, the two people from Naked and Afraid completed their 21-day challenges on Naked and Afraid. But the biggest controversy of Naked and Afraid of Love. Okay, so to preface, you have Jay, the F-boy, and you have Cassoulet, the single mom who's looking for love, and they have an instant connection. But unfortunately, Jay kind of decides that he wants to try to date other people, and Cassoulet does not really approve of this.
Uh-oh. No, you're good. I'm talking about Jay and Cassoulet. Sorry.
Sorry. I thought you were looking at the camera and I was just like, oh.
No, sorry. I was just moving this and trying to make sure that I wasn't swaying too much. You're good.
Understood. So
we're having a lot of tech issues tonight, guys. We're so sorry.
And according to the edit, Jay is the F-boy because the way it was described is he's treating the women he's trying to pursue the same so they don't feel special. And it's just like, well, how do I know your feelings for me are genuine when you're saying the exact same thing to this person over here?
Right.
And so Cassoulet was a little jealous about it, and so she got upset and she's like, and Jay kind of gets reprimanded by a lot of people because they're like, hey, if you like Cassoulet, you need to pursue her. You shouldn't be going around messing with her feelings like this.
Yeah.
And so what happens is, and the way it works, I think it was 25 days that the season takes place over, and during the season, pretty much everybody taps out except for 6 people, and there's 3 sets of 2 people, and they kind of have like the final test of you need to survive in these harsh conditions by yourself, and to, I guess, make a connection, because going through traumatic experiences is a great way to have people like make a connection, and that'll create a healthy relationship afterwards.
Oh yeah, trauma bonding is love. I read that somewhere.
Oh gosh. And so I think it was kind of like that. But so basically everything wraps. You have the 2 sets of 3 the 3 sets of 2, the 3 pairs who are kind of together at the end. It doesn't really work out for one of the other couples. I think the other couple breaks up, but it's amicable. And then a lot of the cast ended up being friends afterwards, so they would like go out and party together. So what happens is, I believe you have Stefan, Cassoulet, and I believe Nelson. I know for sure Cassoulet and Stefan are taking an Uber home, and they had been partying, they were drinking a lot, and Cassoulet and Jay were still together at this time after filming. And I think I might have contradicted myself, but they were basically trying to make it work after filming. But after a night of partying and drinking, Stefan and Cassoulet kiss.
No.
After blacking out.
Oh.
And so basically the drama at the reunion is Cassoulet kissing Stefan after all this stuff where people were yelling at him for being an F-boy and all that. But apparently Cassoulet was very upset because she's like, there were a lot of troubles afterwards, and there was stuff that you didn't see and stuff like that. So I don't think it's like not great what Cassoulet did, but it's like it's kind of expected. They weren't really good for each other either. I think Jay might have been flirting with other people afterwards, but didn't like go that far, I don't think. But it was just like, that was like the main drama of Naked and Afraid of Love that I know of. If any Naked and Afraid survivalists or Naked and Afraid of Love survivalists or any Largados y Pelados Supervivencial Desnudo survivalists want to correct me, then feel free to DM me on Instagram at gingerjewfro, ginger_Jew_fro on Instagram.
I love how every time you tell me about a reality show, I'm like, okay, drama is expected, but then the iceberg goes deeper than you could ever imagine.
Exactly, and it's just like, oh my gosh, afterwards, Castellet kissed Stefan after a night of partying, and I know a lot of the cast are still friends after the show. So it's nice. So it's nice to see that a lot of them created genuine bonds and friendships. And I'm interested to see if any more will have a Naked and Afraid challenge adventure. I'm sure there are some that want to do it. But,
Probably, yeah.
But we shall see.
What's their experience like as far as like being on the set? Like, are they we've talked about some shady sets between like America's Next Top Model and Love Is Blind when it comes to like the reality show space. Is it generally like okay, or like is there drama there, or
you mean like with producers and stuff?
Yeah, just like as far as just like the reality show side of it and like being cast members on it. Do they like does anybody have like any like is it any kind of like, oh, this show gave me trauma and I like hate them because of like their shady practices kind of thing?
I think it's mainly with the editing that a lot of the survivalists are mad about, and I'm sure there are some producers that have their manipulation tactics. I can't remember anything off the top of my head where a survivalist has said, oh, the producers, but I assume there are times where producers have been shady and they're like asking for help, and the producers are like, no, or there's some lying or shadiness. But I know a lot of times with casting, there are times where you know that the pairing isn't going to work out really well. There's a really infamous episode called The Devil's Woods where one of the survivalists, it basically talked about how she was kicked out of her home for being gay.
Oh,
and
no.
So there was a point where you're watching the episode and you just see her and her partner Joe is like the nicest guy ever. Everybody loves him. Just nothing but praise for Joe. He's amazing and he's so nice and understanding and he's very introspective. And there's a point where like basically the audience is supposed to hate Sam and love Joe, but it was kind of a detriment to Joe because she was yelling at him. But the way I interpret it is she's having not PTSD, but having extreme anxiety because she talked about how she had to live in the woods for 8 months after being kicked out of her home.
Oh yeah, that would give you huge anxiety. I'm not a doctor, but I'm just assuming.
And so what I'm thinking is like her fight or flight response was kind of like was flipping on and off constantly, and she's like, we need to survive out here, like I've done this, or it's like or it's just like, I've had to survive out in the wilderness like this, we need to do it like this. And then there would be times where Joe's thing is that he doesn't drink water when he needs to, and so she's like, you're a 40-year-old man, I shouldn't be teaching you how to survive, you need to leave, you're not good at this, and was basically bashing him for the like day 5 to day 11 before she leaves. But it was just very toxic, and I'm sure that was a shadiness on production's part to try to get some personality clashing to be on the show. But I don't know specifically where someone was like, the producer said this to me, but it's mainly the edits that the survivalists are not happy with.
Drink water.
Yes,
drink water, Joe.
Please drink water, Joe. We love you, Joe. And I hadn't
drank water all this entire time we were sitting here. That's why I thought when you said, oh, he wasn't drinking water, I was like, I can't imagine that. Weird.
Yeah. And I just remembered a moment where one of the survivalists, Cassie from Double Jeopardy, the episode Double Jeopardy, she was one of the survivalists whose PSR dropped.
Oh, no.
At the end, she made it the 21 days, but her PSR dropped. But she talked about in her blog, unfortunately, I haven't looked it up recently, but she was talking about how the producers would ask her leading questions. So, yes, some producers do ask leading questions. And there's a point where she's eating snails. And so the producer's like, oh, so how do you feel about the snails? Oh, they're okay. No, but do they taste good? They taste fine. And it's like, compared to everything else, is it is it like the worst thing you've ever eaten? These snails are the worst thing I've ever eaten. They're gross. And so that
Yeah.
only that last part is the part that the audience sees, because the audience is like, or the audience is being led to believe that she's like not really good. But in her blog, she talks about how she did do more. She was more helpful. She and her partner got on very well, but they're just like drama, drama, drama. They're whispering in the other two survivalists' ear, like, oh, she's saying this or she's not doing this. Shouldn't you be mad about that?
Oh yeah, that happens on
Allegedly.
pretty much every reality show because real life isn't always that interesting.
Yeah, and so they're like, must create drama. And unfortunately, with it being Naked and Afraid, they're in the wilderness for 21 days, probably hurting physically and mentally. And
You would think they would that would be enough.
you would think so. I remember hearing about how one survivalist had to like refilm scenes over and over again for camera's sake, and then how the producers were whispering in his partner's ears about, oh, he did this. Isn't he so inexperienced? And was trying to egg on his partner to fight with him. And he was just like, you know what? I'm leaving.
Good for him.
And so it's just like, yeah. And there have been some successful survivalists who might not have done well on Naked and Afraid, but on their own, they're doing just fine. And so it's not necessarily indicative of skill. So even if they tap early, it's like, they're not a bad survivalist. It's just circumstances sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, again, I would not do well.
I would not do it at all.
I wouldn't do it at all. If I'm going to go on reality TV, I'd like to go on Amazing Race.
Oh,
That's the level of stress that I think I can handle maximum.
Oh, fun fact, I was going to say this later, but actually 2 survivalists of Naked and Afraid have been on The Amazing Race.
Ooh.
Alex Menard and Andrew Shade. And Andrew Shade is one of the beloved contestants of the entire series. Everybody loves him. He's very charismatic. He's from Kentucky. He has an accent. He's very charismatic. Everybody loves him, as I've said before.
He's from Kentucky.
He's from Kentucky. I don't think I repeated that. And he's done a few Facebook Lives where he may have hinted at some things that I might discuss later.
Ooh.
And if I don't remember, then I'm sorry for those left in suspense. And also, there's a spinoff called Last One Standing. Moving on, there are currently 15 seasons of...
Is this the thing that you don't want to talk about?
Yes.
Okay. I'll ask you when we're done why you don't want to talk about it.
Okay. But I will say, the highlights of Last One Standing are Dan and Waz, because Dan is the best and he's a scientist and I'm a scientist and he's cool and
science is cool.
Science rules. And if I were to meet a survivalist, he would be one of my top choices. And Waz, because he's Australian. Moving on. Currently, there are 15 seasons and the first episode aired June 23rd, 2013, which means by the time of airing, we will have past the 10-year anniversary of Naked and Afraid.
Yay!
Yay!
We've been naked and afraid for 10 years.
And don't worry, there's controversy about the pilot that I'll talk about in a second.
Oh, we were talking about this a little bit before we were filming. So far, we're still filming.
Yay!
So
far, everything's fine, everybody. But I wanted to talk about my Facebook Live with Tara, Jamie, and Chini, because I was lucky enough to be invited on the Facebook chat with them because they were inviting audience members in, and that's just the kind of individuals they are. They're just like, oh, let's talk with the fans.
Aww.
And so that was cool. And they were asking, or they're like, okay, what is your question? And after awkwardly stumbling through me being like, oh, I can't believe I'm here, I asked about what they felt about the editing for Naked and Afraid solo, and they're like, oh my god, because I noticed a lot on Jamie's solo that they reused footage a lot, and they literally showed something on day 2 as it was on or something on night 2 that happened on night 16, because if you watch, there's a part where he has an encounter with a jaguar where in the distance he sees like eyes and he sees it and it goes away. But if you look, you see that his shelter isn't built, and that he has a fire in a cave nearby, which happened like the first day because he wasn't done with his shelter. And then the quote unquote next morning, his shelter is completely finished, and that it is not a shelter that you can fully complete in one day, because it had a bench, it had like a frame on the side, it had massive leaves that were overhanging it.
Yo, it was a cool shelter.
It was a really cool shelter, and the night before you only see like part of the structure of it, and it's like, huh. And then they use scenes of him walking several times. Like they have like an overhead shot of him that they use multiple times throughout his time on the show. And then I'm trying to remember what else, but they basically reuse a lot of shots for him. And I remember there was a moment that happened to him on like day 12 or something, but then they showed it, but then they re-showed it because because they were showing a cold open without us knowing they were showing a cold open. So we see this footage like 3 times of him being like, or he's Scottish and he's like, my stomach hurts. I don't know what's happening. It's like there are worms in my bladder.
Oh no.
And so I was just like, oh my gosh. I'm like, oh my gosh, his accent, but oh my gosh, it's terrible.
What happened to him?
I think it was after he ate there was a type of nut where if you chop it open, it has larvae inside.
Oh no.
And so he was eating those, and I think that might have caused something, or it might have been some fruit that he ate.
Okay.
But I will say he was very smart, because there was one point where he's like, oh, there's a giant log here, so I'm just gonna hollow it out, put a rock on the end, and I'll put some bait inside and I'll catch fish. And he caught 2 fish with it.
Nice.
And they also reuse the animation that they use the same because what they do is, like, when they're building shelters or traps, is they show an animation of how the trap works or what the finished product will look like of the shelter. And so they basically reuse the same animation of him, of like what the trap looks like in the log. And it's like, oh, you put a rock in it, it sinks down and the fish go in, but they can't swim out. And they reuse that. And it's just like, we have 8 episodes and you can't show any more. Why?
The rest was just him like talking about how much he misses eating Cheez-Its.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Or something. I don't know.
and yeah, they reused footage, switched around things that happen. Oh, and I basically learned that Insertion pretty much takes a large chunk of time, because that's allegedly the only, well, it's the only scripted part. And the Survivalists say there's no production intervention, but it's like, is there production intervention they don't know about? But Insertion is mainly the only scripted part of Naked and Afraid, because there are 2 survivalists. They're giving interviews while they're driving up. They get to the insertion point, they get out of the vehicle, they disrobe, they walk to a landmark where they meet their partner, they see their satchel off to the side, they have their satchel, they show their item, they look at the map, and they go towards water. And so that was discussed, and they're like, oh yeah, extraction takes all day, because they have to get all the angles when they're leaving, and they have to give the interviews and whatnot. So it's just like, okay, I'm being extracted. No, reset, get another angle. Okay, reset, we're getting another angle. And I can't imagine going through a 21-day experience like that and then spending the next few hours being like, okay, time to ride over here. Okay, we're going on another ride.
I can believe it on like a filming standpoint, because like you always need more. It always takes longer to film it than you think it will. Like, see, watch this. Gabe, you want to hear a joke?
Yes.
One more time, background. They always tell you we just need the one more time, and it's never, ever true. I don't even know what camera to look at anymore. It's never true.
It's never true. If you're background on a film set and they say one more time, it's a lie. It's a trap.
It's a trap.
Oh, and then another bit of information that I learned is that Chini, or I believe Chini said it earlier in the Facebook Live, but she said that she also has Raynaud's syndrome.
Okay, good for her. I couldn't imagine.
And an interesting fact is that apparently she applied in earlier seasons, but she was medically unclear to go in, or I should say not medically cleared because of the Raynaud's, but later on I think kind of loosened the restrictions a little bit on it. And then on her solo adventure, they proceed to put her in like the coldest place in Africa where there was like frost in the morning. And she's like, I'm cold, I can't function. And hello, Perry. There is a cat nearby. Sorry. Where they put her in the cold where she can't really function. They're like, it's a challenge. Figure it out. And it's just like you give the person with Raynaud's an area where it gets really cold in the mornings.
Oh, yeah. Like, I've been standing outside in June and, like, held somebody's hand and they've been like, oh my god, are you alive? Because it's just like, my body doesn't circulate blood. I feel cold because it's not circulating very fast. I'm chilly.
Oh no. Oh, sorry, Perry. I slapped Perry in the face. My bad.
Perry also probably was responsible for at least one of the technical issues we had, so you didn't deserve to be slapped in the face, but and stop jumping up here if you're not supposed to be.
Perry, why?
No, we love you, Perry.
We love you, Perry. Oh, but another interesting story that Jamie talked about, well, in his words, in the medic's words, he shouldn't be alive.
In the medic's words?
That's not good. Because what happened was, during his challenge, there's a night where it's raining and his fire went out and he was super cold. And what happened is and the camera crew wasn't there. So he got super cold, passed out, had some weird fever dreams, and then woke up the next morning. And he had his diary cam on the whole time. And so the producers look at the diary cam footage and they come in and it's like, you got hypothermia. You shouldn't have woken up from that.
Oh my god.
Yes. And he was actually almost not cleared to start the challenge to begin with either. Because I think from what I read on Reddit, individuals from Europe are not subjected to mosquito bites like Americans are. So they have
I didn't even think about that.
They have like a bigger reaction to mosquito bites than we do.
Oh.
Even though everyone has an allergic reaction, they get it worse. And I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but the controversial XL8, they were in the Amazon, XL8 in the Amazon. They didn't give the Survivalists bug nets, and 4 people had to tap due to bugs.
No. I didn't even think about that. We're from Georgia, so like, yeah.
We're just like, whoopsies, bugs everywhere.
Uh-oh. I literally last August, I was like, uh-oh, that's a tick bite. It was like the circular bullseye rash. Went to urgent care and they were like, yep, that's a tick bite. Here's some antibiotics for Lyme. I was just like, ha 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 ha. Weird day here in Georgia. Just Georgia things.
And apparently Jamie has the blood type where mosquitoes love him. So it's...
Yeah, apparently it is in your blood. Like, certain blood types are more attracted to mosquitoes. Whatever it is, I have it. I'm not sure what blood type I have, which I should because I've donated blood before and they told me and I just forgot. But whatever it is, I have it. Like, my mosquitoes will bite me in the house. Like,
I think it's O blood type that they like. And...
yeah.
But apparently Jamie is like a mosquito magnet, and he had such a bad reaction that he had to tap on day 2 of XL8 and apparently his bites were so bad he got lockjaw, and he was worried that he was going to grind his teeth because his jaw was just shut. And he talked about how his feet were so swollen he could barely move, and there was a point where he put mud on his leg and he saw like a mosquito crawling on his leg and bit through the mud to drink his blood and whatnot.
Yikes.
And before his solo challenge in Guyana, he showed pictures on his IG where his feet were completely swollen from the bug bites.
Oh no.
And the medics were like, I don't know. And he's like, no, put me in. And so, but luckily he was given a bug net for this challenge, so that helped. And he nearly, the bugs were really bad, and he nearly got by hypothermia, but he made it through. So put that gentleman on an XL challenge immediately.
Wow, good for him.
I believe in this so much. I'm putting my finger in your camera space, but I can't match up my arm correctly. Sorry for cracking my elbow near your head.
Oh, that was your elbow? I was like, yeah, are you okay?
Yeah, everything's fine. Oh, and then there was also a moment on Jamie's 20th day where he's like, okay, everything is going good. I'm almost done. This is great. And then the army of ants started coming closer to his shelter. Like, apparently a mass of ants started coming to his shelter, and he spent hours dumping ashes around his camp, because if they were to get into his camp, he would not be able to be in his shelter anymore.
Hey, fans of Animorphs. Ants. Never the ants.
Globules.
If you've read Animorphs, everybody knows why the ants are like, not the ants.
And so, luckily for him, he managed to get the ash to where, because, our fun fact, insects don't like walking on ash because they have mucus on their feet and the ash dries it out, so they don't like walking on ash.
Learn something new every day.
So if you're out in the wilderness and you don't want crawling insects, just put a ring of ash around your camp. And if it's raining a lot, then you're going to have to get a lot of ash. And so he was likely able to do that. So he powered through, and they, and it's kind of disrespectful that he only got 32 minutes of screen time over 8 episodes, and you don't get to see a lot of this stuff. And
poor dude.
There were like 3 times where he shouldn't have made it, but he did. So put him on an Excel challenge immediately, please. I think they might be filming that soon. They filmed in September last year, so maybe they might do it sooner because there was Frozen last year, and that was a 14-day challenge. That's also a controversial season. But I also have to talk about Tara and their struggles. Now, the important thing to mention about Tara is when we are introduced to Tara on their initial challenge, they identified as a trans woman. And unfortunately, due to medical complications, they were unable to continue their hormone therapy and had to detransition.
Oh, no.
Now, whether they identify as non-binary, trans, I do not know. I apologize. I know on Solo, the narrator used they, them pronouns with Tara, and I've seen interviews with Tara where the interviewers use she, her pronouns, and Tara seemed to be fine with it. So I apologize if I got any of that wrong, but for Tara, I'm just going to be using they, them pronouns, and I hope that's okay. And Tara is very upset about their edit that they got on kind of both their challenges because Tara is tied for the record of most days solo on a challenge with 39 days because on their initial challenge, their partner tapped on day 3. So they had to spend 18, 19 days alone, plus the 21 days. So they have 29.
Wow.
So they have 39 days total of being solo. And on Tara's first challenge, they mainly focus on her partner because since he tapped out so early, I guess they want to get some backstory and show him a lot. And then they don't really show much of Tara using their skills a lot during the challenge, and they were not happy. And then, and also an editing moment on their initial challenge was kind of shady towards their partner because there's a moment where basically their partner gives like this look, like an up-down look, but that was apparently for Tara's bow, not for Tara.
I see. So they made him look
like he was looking and being like, oh, okay, but that was at Tara's bow, not Tara.
That would have made me angry if I was him because it's like that's a little further than like, the typical annoying, like, you made me look like a jerk that one time. You made me look like a brat. It's like, you made me look like just a straight up horrible person for a second.
Yeah, so, but fortunately, Sean, that's his name, was just looking at Tara's bow. And so going back to the editing of Solo, they made Tara look like an amateur because Tara wanted to test their knowledge and test their skills and was like, I'm not going to use the fire starter because in earlier seasons of Naked and Afraid, they don't get fire starters and they would have to use friction fires or a bow drill.
You said fire starters and I thought flamethrowers, so I just pictured them out there on an island like, hell yeah, flamethrower.
Yeah, there was an incident on an island where it got burned down and so they're like, okay, let's tone it down a bit.
Flamethrowers. That would be awesome.
Or no, it's just Drew Barrymore just standing there, just staring and setting things on fire.
Oh my god. Oh, did you see somebody sent me in live because they redid Firestarter and the little girl who plays the main girl in Firestarter was on Drew Barrymore, so they did like the Firestarter pose together. It was cute.
Oh, side note, the actress who played the new Firestarter got nominated for a Razzie, and the Razzies got a lot of flack for that.
Good.
Which they should.
Good. Here's the thing, I find Razzies kind of dumb anyway, because it's like, okay, we don't need to, you don't need to make a whole thing about like, oh, that person did a bad job that one time. Yeah. I don't particularly find it that funny. And there have been people who've won Razzies and Oscars in the same year, so something doesn't make sense.
It's called the writers and or directors, maybe. Or the production, or mainly director, probably.
But yeah, that's a child. What the hell? You're just gonna bully a child?
Yep, they bullied a child and they got flack for it, and it's just like, they're a child, they're doing their best. Aww. Come on, leave them alone.
People suck sometimes.
Yeah, and sorry for getting off topic, but going back. Also, we support the WGA strikes. Pay the writers, please.
Yes.
And going back to Tara, they basically made them look like an amateur because Tara wanted to test themselves, and they did study the environment they were going, or when they tell you where you're going, they're just like, you're going here, instead of or it's just like a general, like, this is the area you're going to be in. So it's just a very broad area, and so they have time to prepare, but it's just like they need to it's just like, they're not like, you're going here, this is the spot you'll be in. It's more broader than that. And so Tara researched the area and was like, okay, these are the resources I'll have. I think I'll be able to make a bow drill and start a fire. But they set Tara up to fail because they tried to start so many fires, but it just wouldn't work. The wood was crumpling in Tara's hands. They found a lot of fruit trees with no fruit in it. Oh. It was just a very harsh it was not for the faint of heart, and Tara kind of pushed through. Oh. And Tara had to hike back to Insertion, which was up a mountain, essentially, for like a couple, I don't know, maybe like 1,000 feet or something, or a little less than 1,000 feet, around that. But they hiked all the way up to Insertion, got the fire started, went all the way back down, and were able to start a fire, but that was after like 3 to 4 days. And they were only shown catching like 3 shrimp during their time, and there was a whole situation where Tara spent hours fishing for shrimp and everything was going fine, but then at the very end of getting shrimp, the top of Tara's pot popped open because they had a massive pot with a clip on top, and so Tara had the pot attached to their ankle and was catching shrimp, and everything was working fine. And then like the last moment, the top fell off and all the shrimp just swam down the river. So now they just lost all that food.
I'd cry. I'd just cry.
And Tara kept powering through, but they still made Tara look inexperienced, and it's like, that's rude. And apparently on the second half of Tara's challenge, they passed 2 kidney stones during the challenge. One was 6 millimeters and one was 7 millimeters.
Oh my god!
They passed those kidney stones, and Tara was basically out of commission for several days, but still was like pushing through. But they edited to make them look lazy, like they weren't doing anything, even after going through this painful experience.
Well, fuck that. Good for Tara. I hope they're okay.
And Tara should go back for an XL, but it should be called XL Tara, where Tara picks the location where they're going to be doing the XL challenge and choosing all the survivalists, and in their contracts that they sign, they legally say that Tara is not to be left alone during this challenge. Tara must have a partner the whole time.
Poor Tara.
Tara deserves better, and Tara is amazing. We here at the podcast love Tara. And
I don't know you, Tara, but I think you're amazing from what I've heard.
From the 5 minutes that I've chatted with you, Tara, I think you're great.
Aww.
And I hope you think that I'm okay and you don't hate me after everything I've said. And also, an important fact that are also on a separate Facebook Live, Andrew, who I said before, he's from Kentucky. Sorry.
Hi, Kentucky.
Hi, Kentucky. He talks about I wasn't on this Facebook Live, but he did a Facebook Live. And one of the things that he talked about was aftercare. And my flags went up a little bit because on America's Next Top Model, they talk about the lack of aftercare that they have on America's Next Top Model. And my thought is, what's the aftercare like on Naked and Afraid? Because after Andrew's redemption challenge, because unfortunately he got a tick bite on his tailbone. Nope. and was there like he might get a MRSA infection. We have to tap him from the challenge.
Yikes.
So unfortunately he's tapped from his first challenge because of ticks, and it really stinks. But on his second challenge, he unfortunately taps himself out on day 12 due to a decline in mental health. And he talks about how everyone was great, everyone was nice, everyone was very supportive, but after everything was said and done and he was cleaned up and he got his food, he was left alone for a long period of time. And he's like, maybe I was having a mental health decline, and I really would have liked someone to be around. So I'm just like, that's an important thing. Like, Naked and Afraid, you should have good aftercare for your survivalists, and maybe that could be like upped a little bit, because I think it would benefit a lot of individuals greatly to have someone to talk to, or make sure to have their mental health checked on, and maybe.
Yeah, I never thought about this until we started talking about things like America's Next Top Model, Love is Blind on the show, and you were bringing up the fact that America's Next Top Model is known for not like, doing any kind of aftercare, and it's just like I never thought about it on reality shows. Like I always thought about reality shows as being super toxic, but I never thought about like the long-lasting effects. I always just thought about it as like, oh, that sucks, and then you get to go home, right?
Yeah.
But it's true. Like that's an important thing, and I'm glad that you have started talking about it so that we can be talking about it, because I think everybody should be talking about it if you're into reality TV.
Yeah. So hopefully, or I haven't really heard otherwise, but I really hope Naked and Afraid has proper aftercare for their survivalists, and I hope that, especially with some of the recent seasons, I'm really hoping that they have some good aftercare for their survivalists. I'm talking about Last One Standing. I really hope they have good aftercare with that. Oh, and also some fun drama I wanted to bring up was recently, after Jamie's challenge, he calls himself the king, and so there's another survivalist by the name of Stephen Lee Hall Jr. that is the self-proclaimed, kind of everyone proclaims, the king of Naked and Afraid. And so there was a little drama where even though Stephen tried to like write out Jamie's name, you can kind of see Jamie's name in the post that he was talking about, and Stephen Lee Hall Jr. is like, who's this guy? I am the king. And Jamie's like, you know what? Jamie's, because it was on Facebook, Jamie made the comment about being the king, and someone's like, oh, I think Stephen Lee Hall Jr. will have something to say about that, and Jamie just like, I would like, or he won't, and Stephen's just like, I have something to say, I'm the king.
That's funny.
And then so it
harmless drama.
Yeah, harmless drama, but it's just like, please don't send hate. They can both be the king. Jamie can be king of Scotland or just the king. It's like, were any of us born into royalty here? I don't know. I feel like Jamie would technically be the closest because he's in Scotland, and that's like a hop, skip, and a jump away from the UK where they have the patriarchy over there. But, just...
Wait, we have patriarchy here. You mean the monarchy?
The monarchy. Sorry, the monarchy. Sorry, I was thinking, the monarchy. Yeah. Kings and queens. I know things occasionally. I'm sorry. Thank you for correcting me.
I'm sorry.
No, thank you for correcting me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm just like, I was just like matriarchy and patriarchy, and it's like, no, it's the monarchy. And I'm just like, oh, my bad. Thank you for correcting me. But yeah, and apparently Matt Wright, the goat of Naked and Afraid, jumped in and called Jamie Prince. Maybe he could be the Prince Albert.
Oh.
And I feel like that's supposed to be a little bit of a dig, and I know Prince Albert means something else. I think it's like a piercing, but I don't know.
Oh, does it? I didn't know this.
We might need to Google it after, but...
Spencer? We're sorry, Spencer. Spencer? We're sorry, Spencer. We just need to start selling merch that says we're sorry.
Sorry, Spencer. And so I'd like to. That's like the fun, quirky drama where it's like, oh, this is nice. Hopefully, it doesn't get too deep. Let's be nice. I
hope the internet doesn't blow this out of hand and make it weird.
Yeah, and a lot of the survivalists seem to like one another, and there have been 15 seasons. There's maybe like. Or like I have it down like maybe like 10-ish controversial survivalists going on, and usually there's not too much drama, but I think there was some drama a little bit ago between some like Tara, Jamie, and Seth, who you haven't heard of but I know of, but I think they had like a little mini argument on the Naked and Afraid comment section of Instagram, but the comments got deleted. I'm not for sure. If anyone wants to fill me in on that, I would love to hear the juicy drama. But and I also say shout out to everyone who's on the show. This is not easy, and you're doing amazing, being willing to be on the show. So you're all awesome.
Yeah, that Kris Jenner meme where she's like, "You're doing amazing, sweetie," but like for real, like not sarcastically.
Yeah.
Like, you're doing great. We're proud of you.
Yes, you're all awesome. And all okay, so so now we're back at the beginning.
Oh God.
And how the first episode
2013 again.
We're still in 2013, where the first episode of Naked and Afraid is not the pilot episode. The pilot episode is episode 2.
What? Okay.
And
Wait. So when you said this, I thought you meant like there was an unaired pilot, but this pilot episode was aired secondarily.
Or as episode 2.
Okay.
If that's what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, the pilot episode was aired as episode 2, and episode 1 might have been episode, or in terms of filming, I don't know if it was the second episode or episode 3 through 6, but the reason why is because while the producer Steve Rankin was scouting locations for the Costa Rican episode of Naked and Afraid on episode 1, he got bit by a fer-de-lance.
Oh.
Which is a heavily venomous snake. And it was, and there were pictures. I'm not going to show them to Avery, but like look it up. His foot did not look good. Like, he needed several, like, you could see bone in the photo. Like, it did not look good.
From the bite? It was that big of a bite?
Or I believe they have a hemotoxin or neurotoxin that kind of just like ate up all the stuff on his foot. I'm trying to see. Rankin tells TMZ, "I was scanning locations in Costa Rica. As I was traversing through some deep jungle, I was bitten on the foot by a fer-de-lance. It's one of the deadliest snakes in the world, and the fangs went right through my boot."
Yikes, that's a big snake.
His team hustled for 2 miles on a makeshift stretcher, drove to a helipad, and had him airlifted to San Jose Hospital, where he got antivenom and antibiotics. But things went horribly wrong. About 5 days later, the flesh on my foot had started to rot, he said. Surgeons in Costa Rica had to cut away a serious chunk of it. He was then rushed back to LA for skin grafts. He says he's recovering nicely now. And so basically episode 1 isn't the pilot. It was supposed to be later, but because of this whole controversy, they swapped things around. They swapped things around. And I'm sure PR was like, look at what happened to a producer with a boot on in the Costa Rican jungle. He got bit by a fer-de-lance. So how are 2 people going to survive? Oh, I see. That one was so crazy. They were like, this is the pilot because this is what's going to get us on air. Exactly. And I remember, and before they aired the first episode of Naked and Afraid, they had a gentleman who was, I think he was tightrope walking across the Grand Canyon, I think. So basically it's this guy on a really thin rope just walking across with like a bar in his hand. Oh, no. And so it's just like anxiety, and then it's like Naked and Afraid, producer bitten on the foot by a snake. Oh wait, that was after that. I remember that guy. I was so stressed I couldn't watch it. I was like having a panic attack for that guy. I was going back and forth, but I'm sure Naked and Afraid was like, yes, okay, people are going to be watching this, so afterwards they're going to see Naked and Afraid, and the rest will be history. And that's kind of what happened. And also in the pilot episode, on the episode 2, which is the pilot episode, but it's marked as episode 2, you have E.J. Snyder, who is the Godfather of Naked and Afraid. That's his title. He's been on many different challenges. He's a tough dude, and I think I say this later, and on his challenge he got like a foot infection. Like, there was a spot on his foot that was white. Yikes. And he basically was treated and then like went back to the challenge afterwards. And then there's this moment on Naked and Afraid 7, I believe, where he's standing on a log and the log breaks. Okay. And there's the pointy part of the log here, and here's him. Ooh. And if you're looking, basically his leg, or the log went in between his legs, and something tore, and he got sewn up in the middle of the Atchafalaya, Louisiana swamp, and just kept doing his challenge. Oh, they did the surgery there? Yep. Oh, and actually the medic who did it actually was on season 15 as a survivalist. Her name is Janice, and she's also a beloved survivalist who was really awesome. But she was the one who sewed him up after the incident.
Nice.
After he hit his nether regions.
I was gonna say, it's not like, dudes have anything important over down there anyway, right? Yeah, nothing breakable.
But so yeah, EJ is like one of the toughest survivalists to ever be on Naked and Afraid. And even though on XL8 he's like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, he's like, maybe I'll come out of retirement if they want me.
They'll pull me out of retirement for one more mission.
Oh no. But it's really interesting because you can kind of tell episode 2 is the pilot because the necklaces are different. The satchels that they wear is different. And then there's a point where after EJ's insertion, you see his back and you can see the mic cord taped to his back. And I'm just sitting there and I'm just like, that tape is gonna come off immediately, and and when he's meeting his partner, the tape is gone. So I'm just imagining them being like, no wait, here, we need to fix this. It's fine.
That's not how you tape somebody.
But yeah, so it's just like, oh well. Sorry. It was a learning experience on that challenge, but luckily EJ's been on plenty of other challenges and he's gotten his satchels and necklace and whatnot. And so I also talk about how Naked and Afraid XL is a spinoff, and you can have 40-day challenges or 60-day challenges, or in the case of XL Frozen, where they were in Montana while it was snowing, it was 14 days.
Oh no.
And the reason why it had to be 14 days was because it was a health issue. Like if they were there longer, then it would be very detrimental to them. So they're like, 14 days in the snow, it should be fine. And it turned out to be one of the, in a lot of people's opinions, the most boring XL, because it was basically them like running out, getting firewood, coming back, maybe getting a fish. There was a conveniently unalive coyote nearby for one of the groups. So it was like, but, and they weren't able to like do as much because again, it was freezing. They can't just like walk around all day. But some of them did kind of walk around all day when they were told to rest and relax a little bit because they had high heart rates and they were tapped from the challenge.
Boy.
That's not great. And all this stuff in my notes, I'm like, oh, I already said a lot of this stuff. So it's like, yay, skipping.
That happens when I take notes. I'm just like, oh, already read that. Moving on.
And so now I'm just going to talk about like well-known, really well-liked survivalists, just so everyone can get a feel about who's here, where to watch, who to look out for, who should come back. And I talk about Matt Wright, who's like the goat of Naked and Afraid. He's caught impala. He's caught boar. He's caught even more impala. He probably has one of the highest success rates of anyone in terms of hunting on Naked and Afraid. And the thing about Naked and Afraid is that it focuses on hunting a lot, but there are some survivalists who are able to find other means of food in terms of like vegetables and plant life and stuff like that. But that's not very interesting as seeing someone hunt. So it stinks that those individuals are pushed to the side where they're like, oh no, I was eating every day. We found like spinach and stuff and it was great.
Oh.
But it's all about hunting and drama, as they say in Australia. And then also I talk about EJ Snyder, who's the godfather of Naked and Afraid. Bring him back. He's skilled and adored by all. He's tenacious as heck, and he makes, and some of the knives that he designed are on the recent season, are on the Naked and Afraid Last One Standing. And so that's cool. And then I have Joe, who I talked about, who's like one of the most likable contestants, who's just really kind and
golden retriever energy.
Pretty much.
We love it. We love to see it.
And unfortunately on the XL Frozen, he was basically told to like drink water and rest, and he did not do that, and he unfortunately had to be tapped from the challenge. And people were like, no. And his storyline, or part of his story edit for his first challenge, was talking about being adopted.
Mm-hmm.
And recently, actually, he found his birth mom and was able to reunite with her in South Korea.
No, oh my God, that's so great.
And so he's just like, I'm ready for another challenge.
Oh, I love that.
And so it's just like, and is thankful for Naked and Afraid for his journey of self-discovery and finding his mom.
Oh, I love
And
that.
so I'm just like, oh, and so it's like, oh, if they bring him back, he has this redemption, he has a storyline, he's ready to go.
It's weird that it's rare, I should say, that you and I hear stories covering reality TV or anything like that in general, where it's like, and then my life changed for the better.
Yeah, there are some times where you get like a handful. Like I'm just thinking of Bachelor and Bachelorette, where I think Bachelorette there are more successful relationships, but it's just like, yeah, or you're scrolling through and it's like broke up, stayed together, broke up.
Oh,
so it's just
boy.
like, it's great when you have those moments of winning.
Yeah.
Or the survivalists where things happen for the better with them.
The less cynical outlook is always nice every once in a while.
Yeah. But and then you look and you're like, oh, that person had lesions for a week. That person got dengue fever. That person got malaria.
What is dengue fever?
I can't describe it, but it's just I remember Manu from Double Jeopardy. She got it, and she had to like relearn how to walk, I believe.
Oh, no.
But it affected her. But it's one of those things where I'm trying to remember the symptoms. That it's like you get really, really hot, you get really, really cold, your fever just spikes all over the place.
Okay.
And I can't describe it, but it's not great.
Gotcha.
It just takes a lot out of you, and it just hurts. And Andrew Shade is another well-liked survivalist. He's from Kentucky. He's charismatic. He was on Amazing Race and is actually going to be on a show called Buddy Games.
Buddy Games.
Okay. I think it's going to be on CBS, but it's hosted by Josh Duhamel.
Okay.
I think, and so Andrew is a reality show aficionado. But he said that after tapping from his redemption challenge, he might not be going back. But I have it on good authority that maybe that might not be true.
Inside source.
Insights, because maybe on someone's Facebook Live they said he was visiting family, but then a few weeks or like a little bit later, Andrew came down with dengue fever, which I don't think you can get in Kentucky.
I mean, anything's possible, but I've never heard of it before.
But I mean, we'll see how that goes, and maybe we'll be seeing him on our screens again in a few months. Maybe we won't. I don't know. Did another podcaster imply that another survivalist was going to be going on another challenge? I know that. I'm going to talk about it later.
Woo!
And then there's also a survivalist by the name of Shanika Malcolm, who basically she and her partner were inserted into a location called Chiapas, Mexico, where 4 survivalists, including 2 returning survivalists, tapped from the challenge. Or 2 survivors who completed an XL challenge tapped from this location, and then they brought in 2 more people, and then they tapped from the challenge. And so
sorry, Spencer.
And so Shanika and her partner are inserted in. Her partner taps at day 11. And she makes it all the way through. She's very spiritual and very of nature and has a great respect for nature. And she has a lot of people rooting for her. And she just seems like a very kind, caring human being.
Aww.
And so she's well liked. And now we have another like goat of Naked and Afraid by the name of Laura Zara. Laura Zara is a survivalist we'll probably never see again on a Naked and Afraid challenge, unfortunately.
Aww.
But she was in season 1 of Naked and Afraid. She was the first female survivalist to complete a 60-day challenge.
Good for her.
She was also on the first XL challenge. She and Stephen Lee Hall Jr. survived in Alaska for a challenge, and they were the first to complete like a Frozen-esque challenge. And they were also attacked by a bear. Or not attacked by a bear, but a bear was kind of circling their camp. But Laura, to this day, even though she hasn't been back since XL5, and there have been 9 XLs, and she still has like the most days of any female survivalist.
Wow.
After XL5, after all those years. And she's never tapped from a challenge, but due to her edit on XL5 and because she doesn't find the XL or the Naked and Afraid challenges very challenging, she's like, you know what? I'm not going back. I have my own things I'm gonna do. Yeah,
I'm all right. I'm all set. I got my experience, and that's enough.
And I'll talk about her edit when I talk about like controversial survivalists. I feel like I'm going on and on. I'm like, oh no, I've been talking for hours.
Oh no, I'm just soaking it in. I don't know anything about this, so I can just relate it to what my brain the questions that my brain has in the moment, like, what is dengue fever?
Or dengue fever.
Dengue fever. What is dengue fever?
I'm sure we'll look at it. It's like, oh, but yeah, there are some survivalists who caught it, and it's just like, it's not fun, according to them. And also another well-liked survivalist is Christopher James, the first Canadian, or the first, yeah, I think there was a female survivalist who was Canadian, but he's the first male Canadian to ever go on a Naked and Afraid challenge. And he's the one who got the blood infection in his feet and still came back for a redemption challenge, because what had happened was, and he was inserted into Devil's Canyon in Mexico, which had, on season 15, there were 2 other survivalists that attempted it. Spoiler alert, they both tapped too. And so on Christopher's insertion hike, this I believe this is accurate. I'm sorry if it's not, but when he was getting inserted, he got a heat blister, I believe it was, and it like burst and like came off. All in that insertion hike. So his feet were not doing good, and then there were thorns in his feet, and so he basically ended up getting an infection in his feet. And his partner unfortunately had to tap on night 3 because she, I believe, broke or fractured her ankle.
Oh no.
And they made it look like she was going to the bathroom and hurt herself, but apparently she had hurt herself previously, and then she like fell during the night, and that kind of like exacerbated everything. That
sucks.
And so he basically made it to day 8 before leaving, because he was just in so much pain, and he wasn't really able to move around. And he was talking to the medic, and the medic was like, maybe you should tap. And he was just like, okay, that's fine, I'll leave, when he should have been medically tapped because he got an infection in his feet and wasn't able to move around. That's also another kind of gripe I have with Naked and Afraid, because there are times where survivalists should obviously be med tapped, but they're coherent enough or their symptoms aren't bad enough. So it's like, oh, you have to tap from the challenge. We can, and I'm just thinking production is like, how can we make this part of their edit if they tap on their own rather than us tapping them? So I thought that was a little shitty. Christopher has nothing but good things to say about his time on Naked and Afraid, despite everything that happened. And he's like, you know what, whatever be will be. And I'm like, that's a good attitude to have, but I'll be shady to production for you. And he also came, and Christopher James also came back for a redemption challenge on a really good episode on season 15 called Bro Hold My Fear, where Chris, Andrew, and 2 other survivalists came back for redemption, and 3 of the 4 got their redemption.
So I looked up dengue fever because I had to know. Dengue fever, also known as break bone fever, is a which doesn't sound good, is a viral infection that spreads from mosquitoes to people, most common in tropical, subtropical climates. Most people who get dengue fever won't have symptoms. This is officially an educational podcast now. Congratulations. People that do have symptoms suffer high fever, headache, body aches, nausea, and rash. And it goes on to list symptoms such as high fever, severe headache, pain behind the eyes, muscle and joint pains, nausea, vomiting, swollen glands, rash, and that's not even the more serious ones. The more serious ones are weakness, pale and cold skin, being very thirsty, blood in vomit or stool, restlessness, fatigue, bleeding of gums and nose, rapid breathing, persistent vomiting, and severe abdominal pain.
Yeah, so
I'm so sorry, anybody who's gone through that. That sucks.
Yeah, I know Manu and Andrew have gotten in, so luckily, and they both made a full recovery, and
Yay.
Andrew has since bounced back. But the doctors were like, oh, we don't, or at first the doctors didn't really know what Andrew had, but then they found out, and then he just kind of got better, and they're like, oh, okay, well, if you feel anything else, come back. And he's like, oh, okay, something might trigger another episode of dengue fever, maybe. Oh, and apparently I don't want to say it's like chicken pox, but it's basically like you can be asymptomatic after you get it the first time, but then the second time you get it, it's a lot worse kind of thing. So it's just like, oh, well, he must have had it, or I think he had antibodies for it, which means he like had it previously, I think is what he talked about on his Facebook Live. So, you know, oh, but I don't remember Kentucky being a tropical environment. I don't know if I'm giving anything away, but you know, science. I'm probably very wrong. And also, Christopher James is the knot master. He has videos on his YouTube about various knots that he makes, and a lot of survivalists have said that if they were to go on Excel, they would want him to be their partner.
Oh, a knot master, like making knots, like
K-N-O-T,
tying knots.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you meant like not affirmative master.
Oh, no,
as in
sorry.
like, oh no, don't be so down on yourself, sir.
No, he has a lot of PMA, positive mental attitude, and he's a KNOT master.
Nice.
He knows all the knots, and a lot of survivalists have said if they were to go on a challenge, they would want him to be there as a partner. And also, Jake Nodar is a very well-known and loved survivalist because he's like, I'm a flaming homosexual. And he has a very effervescent personality. He has, I don't want to say the name, but he basically has a series of videos on his Instagram where he basically is, or, the other name for a rooster?
Yeah.
The C word, essentially. He's like, I'm the blank whisperer. Let's go look at some... and stuff like that.
You mean like that? Oh, you weren't on Blockers.
I was on Blockers.
Oh, you were. Okay, so that show that we were on, that they called it Blockers because they could, with a rooster on the poster, because they couldn't call it what they wanted to call it, which was Blockers. Yeah.
C word Blockers, and so he has like an Australian accent. He's like, everyone send me your rooster pics, but he says the C word, and he's like, oh, look at this one, and he talks about, because he's very well versed in chickens, and he was also on several other reality TV shows. I think there was one about jousting he was on. He was on one where he survived in Alaska, but he was fully clothed for that one, and he's just he also hosts a podcast called Jake and Afraid. So if you haven't seen it, everyone should look into it. He's very funny. And I told Avery about this before, but there was a episode where he was talking with his mom, and his mom was talking about Dan and Sheeny on that spinoff that I don't want to talk about, and his mom was like, oh, Dan and Sheeny have really good chemistry. I think they're really cute together. And Jake is like, well, mother, Dan is a flaming homosexual. So that's not really going to work out the way that you want it to. And also Dan is married. For everyone who's or just so everybody knows, I know everyone's very like, oh no, he's married, but cute couple, all that jazz. Also Dan Link is someone who I have as well known or well liked, because he basically dominated the Amazon XL8 challenge where 4 people tapped out because of bugs. Like the bugs left him alone. And he was trying to support his partners, but unfortunately both of them tapped. He would make bridges in his camp to keep from what's it called? Not trunk rot. The one, basically if your feet are wet for too long, it causes issues.
Yeah.
Trench foot. To keep from trench foot. He was building traps. He was learning new things. He was learning, growing, adapting. And also, even TMZ reported on this. There's a side story that goes along with this, but he had the brilliant idea to eat tomatoes before his challenge in Amazon because he knew he was going to be there for 40 days. And so he ate tomatoes. And there are some species of tomato where the seeds can last through your digestive tract. And basically he made a tomato garden in the Amazon.
Wow.
Unfortunately, they didn't bear fruit. But he ended up spending 60 days, even though he was supposed to spend 40. But he basically had his own little tomato garden in the Amazon. So,
wow.
So there could have been a point where he could have had little tomato fruits during his challenge.
Wow, that's really cool.
And so I'm just like, oh wow, he's so adaptable, and he's doing new and amazing things, and he's a marine biologist, and he started out as a fan on a 14-day challenge, and on his 21-day challenge they put him in the desert, even though he's used to tropical environments, but he did well in that challenge too. And actually his 21-day challenge called Sand Trap, season 12 episode 4 I believe, was nominated for an Emmy for outstanding visuals and stuff, and I'm like, of course, because Dan Link, if you look up a picture of him you can see why. And it's funny because Dan likes to make little outfits throughout his challenge, and for his extraction days and whatnot. Yeah. There was one on his extraction from from XL8, he had caught a bird, and he created a bird kind of chest plate, or a feathered chest plate.
Wow.
And he had cool makeup on, and he has cool makeup on, it's just look him up on Instagram. He has him there, and he's very cool. And also Waz Addy, who I talked about earlier, he's Australian, but he's like the king of like mental fortitude, where like everything's going on. He's like, oh, it's all right, it is what it is. You know, you gotta just grin and bear it. It could be worse, but you know, we'll just do what we can. We can help our circumstances, and we will do our best, kind of thing. And then, oh gosh, there's so many things to talk about. And I also Chini is also someone who's been on in a lot of people's radars recently, because she also has Raynaud's, but she's like, I will survive, I am tough. On her initial challenge, she got a massive fish hook through her thumb, and they basically, the way that they had to get it out was they had to poke it through, or this is a little but it like caught on like this part of her thumb, and they had to like push it through, not like through her thumb, but they had to like have it so it like the tip broke back through the skin, so that they could cut it, so that they could they could remove it. And she's just like, it is what it is, just wrap it up, it's fine, it hurts a bit, but whatever.
I just had like empathy pain for her.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it now, I'm just like, oh. But and then on her solo challenge, she managed to catch 2 massive catfish, and she built a very extravagant shelter to try to like keep the heat in, even though she was like suffering most of the time because of the cold. And then she's on the recent spinoff that I don't really want to talk about, and she's doing she's doing okay, but she had the least experience of everyone going in, and she's doing really good. So it's like, you're awesome. And then next we have Janice, who is the medic turned survivalist, who has had to deal with our I just realized she basically had to sew up EJ in his nether regions after him falling on the log. But also on the first episode of season 15, the male survivalists got a coal that kind of floated in and landed on that area, and she had to be the one to like medically like clean the area and deal with that. And so so good on her. She's great at her job, and she's really nice, and everybody loves her, and people were rooting for her.
We were all rooting for her. And
she did it. And she was also interviewed on, there's also, other than Naked and Afraid, there's a podcast called Oh Heck Nah, and it's N.A.A for Naked and Afraid. Oh Heck Nah, a Naked and Afraid podcast, who the hosts Malu, Beyonce, and Debbie. Is
it actually heck, or is this?
Yeah, it's Oh Heck No.
Okay.
Yeah. And Janice was interviewed by Malu. I believe Malu. I don't know why repeating the same thing might help me, but it's a really nice interview, and Janice is just really kind and cool and supportive, and good on her.
Yay.
And also check out Oh Heck Nah, a Naked and Afraid podcast, because some of the interview information that they got, I'm going to be talking about. So thank you, Malu, for that.
Woo.
Malu. And
citing
her
sources.
Yay. Yeah, citing sources. And Malu's last name is legitimately Beyonce. I believe that's what is on their driver's license.
Amazing.
So good for them. And also we have Stephen Lee Hall Jr., the self-appointed king of Naked and Afraid, and a lot of people give him that title as well. And his catchphrase is, I'm kind of a big deal. But after him going through 6 challenges and being one of the first people to make 200 total days on Naked and Afraid, he's kind of earned that title of the king. And I'm kind of a big deal. It kind of works for him too. And he's very artistic. He's lost 4 separate teeth, or 4 teeth on 4 separate challenges.
Oh my god.
He's tenacious. He gets her done. He has suffered, but he has succeeded, and he's very popular. And he also sells art. So if you want to commission from him, then check out his Instagram page, and I'm sure you can email him. And his Instagram is Stephen Lee Hall Jr. So check him out on IG, and maybe you can get a portrait done. We'll see.
Yeah.
And then. I'm just like, there's so many things. I'm not even halfway through all the stuff that I wrote.
If you want to skip ahead, you're free to,
Okay. I kind of want to talk about controversial survivalists for a second,
right.
If that's okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Tell me about controversial survivalists.
I say controversial, but these are the individuals that are spoken about on Reddit a lot, or just their attitude during a lot of the challenges was not so great, or
I had no idea this show had this much of a following. Good for it.
I mean, they have two separate Facebook pages that have like thousands of followers. But the interesting thing about Reddit is it's not as drama filled as you would think. It's like, this person's lazy, I don't like this person, but it's not like, oh, here's some spoilers for this, or here's some crazy theories about that. It's just like, this person's lazy, I don't like them. Recently, the Facebook pages in Reddit are filled with the excuse me, sorry, I burped. That's how I feel about, or that's what I feel about Last One Standing. But there's a lot of there's a lot of stuff going on there, so I just kind of avoid them right now. Anyway, controversial survivalists. First, we have Lacey, who has completed 1 out of 5 challenges.
All right.
And so basically the way her edit shows her as not being the nicest to some people sometimes.
Yeah.
Where during her first or second XL, there was a point where one of the I think it was her redemption XL challenge, where on her first XL she got injured, so she had to leave. On her second one, there was a point where there was a survivalist who wasn't doing well, and it was edited to make it look like she basically like was like, okay, you're dead weight, please leave.
Oh my gosh.
And so I was like, oh. And later she burns her hand and she's like, why isn't anyone helping me? And then she leaves.
Oh.
And then she's like, I don't want to deal with people, I want to go solo. And then she goes on a solo, and then she ends up leaving because she doesn't want to be alone. And then she's brought back for the XL7, which is in Louisiana, which is supposed to be a 60-day challenge, but unfortunately the cold took out a few survivalists.
Oh.
And she was one of them. So it's like, oh. But there are some times where she just hasn't been nice to hasn't really been nice to people, and at least according to the edit. And on her first challenge she seemed fine, but like on her initial interview she's like, I just need a big dumb strong man to help me through this challenge. But then later her partner has to leave, and she's like, oh, we created a friendship, but now he has to leave, that's kind of sad. And she's like, you know what, I'm not leaving.
Aww.
But her edit has not done her any favors. And then we have probably one of the most controversial survivalists, Honora. Now Honora is the one who created the article, or wrote a blog and said that Naked and Afraid is a Nazi experiment, and Discovery is very mean and taking advantage of people.
Go back. What?
That's not the exact quote, but basically she compared Naked and Afraid to a Nazi experiment, and Discovery is basically taking advantage of the survivalists by what I'm basically using them for money to get good ratings and not really helping them out when they're in times of need in terms of like mental health and stuff.
I'm all for calling out the reality shows for being shady, but that's a little much.
Yeah,
I don't know. So. I don't know. I wasn't there.
Yeah, and apparently what happened with Honora is she talks about how apparently she and her partner brought like 4 survival items each, and she brought he brought 4 knives, she brought 3 knives and a water filter, but they decided to like leave out the water filter because that kind of like doesn't really, or that takes you out of the experience. It's like, you need to survive, you need to figure out ways to do things. And like her survival item that was chosen for her was a magnifying glass, and on the show she talks about how, oh, this magnifying glass was given to me by my dad, and I want to use it because you use the UV rays to kill bacteria in the water and stuff like that. But apparently that was a lie. The magnifying glass was just a magnifying glass, and they told the producers told her to make up that story.
Oh, okay.
And then there was a point where apparently she found an abandoned fishing lodge and tried to raid it, but then the crew came by and was like, you can't do that.
They're like, look, here's the thing. I mean, if you were surviving in the wilderness, you probably would.
Yeah, but they're like, no, it's you can't just raid something man-made. And then, oh gosh, she was so...
Let me go run down to the 7-Eleven.
Exactly. Just run through the jungle to the 7-Eleven, buy some Listerine and some Neosporin, and I'll be good. I remember watching her episode. She was so mean to her first partner because she would be working in the middle of the day and exhausting herself and almost passing out because she's because she's losing a lot of because she's losing a lot of water to the sun and stuff. And her partner's like, no, I'm not going to work during the hottest parts of the day. I'm going to be in the shade. And she's like, you're fat and you smell bad.
Oh, no.
And she was just saying very disparaging things. And then she ended up passing out and being taken from the challenge. But according to her, she faked passing out so she could leave the challenge because she just hated it so much. And then she was asked to come back for the first XL challenge and proceeded to tap and also throw her partner's survival items in the water nearby.
Oh no.
And they weren't able to get everything back either. I think they found like 1 or 2 things, but it was just like, and people are saying like, yeah, one of her partners wasn't the nicest to her, but maybe he was poking her, or I think it's implied that maybe he was poking her a little bit to make her go off.
Yeah.
But it's just like, she threw their stuff in the water and tapped. That's just don't do that.
That's not good.
And then I also have I have a pair of controversial survivalists by the name of Alana and Danny B. Because what had happened was on the first Naked and Afraid XL, they were kind of the mean girls, where Alana was kind of the leader of the mean girls and Danny kind of followed her, where their initial partner was Shane, and they were like, and Alana was just basically being mean to him the whole time and is like, survival has to be lazy. And they're like, he's weird. I don't like him. And he basically like left them. He didn't tap, but he just left their group. And then they basically bullied another girl to tap out of the challenge.
Oh, no.
Where they were just like, I can't remember exactly what they were doing, but they were basically like getting mad at her for no reason. And she's like, you know what? I can't deal with this. And she left. And so that was kind of not nice to essentially bully someone off the show. I don't know about bully because people are like, oh, this isn't this isn't elementary school. This is Discovery. We don't say bully here, but they were mean girls.
I mean, I feel like you can bully somebody at any age. Like, it's all the same. Like,
but I'm sure there are comments that's like, no, they didn't bully her because bullying her is this, and they were doing this, and it's just like, okay.
They were being a jerk.
They were being kind of
whatever word you want to use for it.
Exactly. And also, okay, not sorry, but another major controversial D-bag, probably, maybe, at least that's what his edit showed, was Nathan from the episode Opposites Don't Attract. Basically, this guy from the get-go was like, I'm really good. I'm amazing. I'm a very talented survivalist. I really hope she can keep up with me. And was basically mansplaining things to her. Like, we should do it like this. We need to do it like this. And then he builds this massive bed of bamboo. And he's like, I need it to be like this or else I won't be able to sleep. And he's like, you need to do this. You need to split the bamboo like this. And his partner, Justice for Molly, his partner, she's trying to do what he's saying, but she ends up cutting herself, and he's like, oh, she's so untalented. She's cutting herself with the machete. That's such a rookie move. And side note, a lot of expert survivalists has accidentally hit themselves with knives and machetes.
Oh boy.
That's another thing. And it's great how they really love on Naked and Afraid to show blood and vomit and gore on this show. And it's just like, you're not even going to attempt to blur some of this. I don't want to see someone like losing their lunch here.
Ew.
But basically back to Nathan, he basically there is one point where he like loses his mind on her, where he's just like yelling. He's like, you're not really that good. I'm amazing. Why or just like, you need to do it like this. You haven't even thanked me. And she's like, oh, I'm really thankful for all you've done and all the work that you put into this. And he's like, well, you better. And he just like rants at her. And this is after there's the rainstorm and they have to get under their shelter in the dirt to be covered from the rain, and she had the audacity to suggest a covering for the both of them.
Oh no.
And so basically he's yelling at her for several minutes straight, and it's so uncomfortable, and she's trying to diffuse the situation, and she ends up like leaving. She's like, I can't do this. And so she just goes to another area and spends a night by herself, and the producer comes by and he's like, so what's going on? She's like, I'm too far into it. I can't like make a camp on my own. He has some of the supplies. I have to leave.
Yeah.
And so she basically had to leave the challenge.
Oh, that sucks.
And he's just like, oh, well, oh, that stinks. Oh, I'm sorry she had to leave. And it's just like, oh. And then he proceeds to climb a coconut tree to try to get some coconut, or a palm tree to try to get some coconuts, and proceeds to slide down the coconut tree and, like, scrapes up his entire
Yikes.
front.
Ooh.
And then it rains that night, so he has to, with all of his scabs, get in the dirt
Yikes.
to hide from the rain, and ends up having to tap from the challenge like a day or two after his partner.
But he's so good. But how he was so good at survivalist stuff?
Exactly. It's just like, well, that stinks. I'm so sorry.
If she had done that, he would have been like, "Oh, typical woman."
Exactly. He was
sliding down coconut trees.
Why would she even think of doing such a thing? That's so dumb. And it's just like, well, you know. And I don't think he even had to do it. He's just like, I have some energy left. I'm going to try to climb this coconut tree. Proceeds to scrape himself on the way down. And I'm just like, oh. People are like, karma.
Karma.
And then moving on, we have Amber and Trish. And mainly Trish, but what had happened was Amber has already had some controversy surrounding her just because of the way she treated her first and second partner, because on her initial 21-day challenge, she called her partner the P word. That's another name for a cat, because he didn't want to try to catch a crocodile with, like, spears, like wooden spears. And she's like, just jump on his back. I know crocodiles. And he's like, no. And he's like, stop being such a P word. And so basically he's got some snails and he cooked them up, and she got sick, and he's like, he poisoned me.
Oh boy.
And she had to leave because she got sick from the snails, and she's like, it's all Ryan's fault.
Oh boy.
And he ended up being the first person to catch an alligator on Naked and Afraid history and was able to get him. So good for him. And then on her second challenge, she and her partner kind of argued a little bit. I think it was over, like, how much firewood they were getting. And the interesting about her second challenge is her partner had already been there for a few days, but his first partner tapped within, like, the first the first day or three. And so she was brought in, and so he would, like, have to survive 23 days as opposed to 21.
Yeah.
But she ends up, I don't know the exact, well, they argued over, like, who's carrying more firewood or something, or he made a comment that she was carrying more, and it was just like, or maybe she's like, I'm carrying more than you, you need to put more work in. And then later she ends up, in her words, breaking her boob. I think she had an implant and it broke. Oh no. Is what happened. And so
like, we can break those?
But I think she has had a implant, and I don't know if it burst, because I think that's a little bit more of a medical issue, but, like, something happened.
Clearly something happened.
Something happened in there, and so she had to leave the challenge, and her partner ended up being there for 23 days total. Now, the most anyone's ever survived on a Naked and Afraid challenge that wasn't XL was 25, and that title is held by Jeremy McCaw, where his partner tapped, I think, on day 3 or 4, and they brought in a new survivalist, and it's just like, hey, you can either leave on day 21 and leave your partner for a few days, or you can stay with your partner and stay 25 days. And he's like, I'm going to stay with my partner. And so that was nice. And then going back to Amber, it wasn't until her beef with Trish where it was just like, oh no, the controversy is here, because on XL8, or Trish is a survivor, or basically a lot of the fandom hates Trish because I don't know if they view her as lazy or if she and Amber had a beef, because on XL8, the Amazon one, you know, where 4 people tapped within the first week because of bug bites, then 2 others tapped on that one in the first week due to different circumstances, which I'll maybe discuss later. And so a bunch of people are gone, emotions are high, but Amber, Trish, and their third partner were, like, the only team to stay, like, the whole time, or, like, none of them tapped within the first week, and all of them ended up making their designated days. But basically Trish and Amber butted heads pretty much the majority of the time, because Trish saw Amber as a micromanager, and Amber was just trying to mentor Trish.
Okay.
And I was kind of I don't want to say I was on Trisha's side, but I saw her point of view where it's like, if you're stuck with a micromanager for a month, you're gonna kind of lose your mind a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the way the edit was shown, it was basically showing Amber doing a lot of the fishing and hunting for food. And we see Trish and their third partner basically making ways for them to be more comfortable for their 40-day stay.
Yeah.
And Amber would be like, hey, can you do this? And they're like, no, I don't really want to do that right now. I want to do something else. And then when they would do stuff, it's like, oh, well, maybe if you do it like this, maybe if you do it like this, maybe if you do it like this. And so they butted heads a lot. And it kind of came to a head when on day 20, they introduced Matt, EJ, and Jeff into the challenge to kind of help out the remaining teams. He goes, oh, six people tapped in the first week. They need help. Kind of thing. Was it planned? I think it was. Because they didn't give them bug nets until like 2 weeks or like after a week after like 6 people tapped, 4 of them being for the bugs kind of thing.
Okay.
So I think it was kind of planned to bring them in and give them like stories to be like, oh, I was doing this and they whisked me away immediately. And so, but yeah, and then Jeff comes in and Jeff is on Trish's side and is like, oh yeah, she can be kind of bossy and kind of creating a rift, an even bigger rift. And then Jeff had to leave because of he was very vague in his Instagram/Facebook post about it, but I think it might have been malaria, but it wasn't malaria, but it was something that it was from the parasite that causes malaria. And so he had to leave. And basically we see Jeff, and Jeff is also controversial. We see him on that challenge talking to the medic. The medic's like, oh, you're fine to continue. And he's like, are you sure? I'm not. Or he's just like, are you sure I should be staying? I'm not feeling good. This is happening. And so they med tap him from the challenge when he probably should have just tapped himself. But it looked like he was like badgering the witness. I don't know. He was just like, are you sure?
Packing bags. So you're saying that I can go. Well, I'm not saying that. Like, I think you're good to sit. But so you're saying getting on the plane that I can't stay here. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think you know what? I think you should probably leave just for your health. Oh, okay. I'm like, bye after. And like at the beginning of the challenge, Jeff is like, I've never tapped from a challenge. I was the first one to make it 60 days on a challenge. I have the most days of anyone on Naked and Afraid right now. Taps within the his first 7 days because of an illness. Well, med tapped, but I don't know. That I'm a little shady. He's very controversial. He was kind of a jerk on XL5.
Got you.
At least that's what the edit told us. But basically, Jeff came in and created an even bigger rift between Trish and Amber. And so after a month, I think on day 33, Amber's like, I'm leaving. And Trish and the other partner is like, what? Why would you do that? Or no, I think they were like, okay, bye. And then later when Trish is being extracted, she goes by Trish's new camp and Trish is like, you left us. And Amber's like, no, I didn't. And it's just like, just a lot of butting heads, but people are very anti-Trish because they see her as lazy, because during the time alone, the Trish's other partner was like, Trish, I can't do this on my own. You need to get up. You need to help me with this.
Oh dear.
And it was just like, oh, but I remember seeing Trish's initial challenge. She didn't seem lazy. I think there's just some editing going on to make her look bad.
Okay.
But I don't know. I live for the drama, but
That honestly, I've seen a lot more controversy from people going up against a lot less on reality TV. So you know what? Good for the show, all things considered.
Well, and now we're gonna talk about Seth.
Oh boy,
Seth is oh my god, people are very mean to him to the point where Seth kind of tried to do an Ask Me Anything on Reddit, and the moderators were like, hey, please let us know before you do that.
Oh, no.
And Seth was like, my bad. And people were being so mean to him. And Seth is like, what happened to support the Survivalists moderators? What's going on? And they're like, we don't care.
Oh my god.
But and also I would recommend everyone listen to Seth's interview on Oh Heck Nah, because he reached out to Malou Beyonce and she was just like, I don't know, you're very controversial. And they had an interview and Malou was like, hey, you're kind of rude to these people. And Seth took ownership of that, and he's like, you know what? This is what was going on. I felt like my partner during this challenge was doing it on purpose. I'm not really the best communicator in these situations. And so it was like, oh, okay. But apparently he got into a fight with Tara and Jamie on the Naked and Afraid Instagram. And I'm just like, I believe in Seth. I want him to get his redemption. He can do this, all that jazz. But on his first challenge, he was basically the first person ever who was kind of banished from a camp because he was in a tribe episode, and it was 2 men inserted together and 2 women inserted together, and he and his partner kind of butted heads, and they kind of had a lot of arguments, and people took his partner's side because Seth was edited to look like he was the aggressor in all these situations. And Seth was just having a miserable time. I find it kind of a funny moment, but it's not really funny, where Seth is like going out to 10-1 into the woods and he hurts himself, and his partner's like, you good? And he's like, no, I'm not good. I'm very not good. This sucks. Or he said something, and I was just like, oh, it's kind of funny, but it was not. And his partner's like, dude, you need to do something. You need to stop complaining. And so his attitude was kind of not teetering towards the not positive at all spectrum. And so he was just kind of over it, and he butted heads. And after the merge, one of the people had to tap, and then his other 2 partners were like, you know what, we don't want him around. He doesn't really they're like, he's not really doing much, but Seth is the one who's like bringing in massive logs for like constructing the shelter. He's kind of the workhorse through it all, and he's just getting into mini arguments. And so on day 13, his partner's like, you know what, or day 11 or day 12 or day 13, his partner's like, you know what, you're not allowed back at our camp anymore. And he's like, you know what, I'll figure it out. I'll do it myself. And then he's like, you know what, I'm leaving. I can't. And then he was brought back on XL6, which they brought in 4 survivalists who had tapped from previous challenge to try to get a redemption. And he made it to day 25, but he and Suzanne butted heads almost the entire time. He had 2 partners, but his second partner tapped on day 2 or 3. So he was with Suzanne for most of the rest of his challenge, and they butted heads so much. And apparently they had a talk where they're like, they're not going to say disparaging things about the other during their interviews. They would try to keep it amicable, but there was a lot of tension between the 2 of them. And it was shown that Suzanne was kind of trying to help Seth out and trying to give him advice with things. And it was edited to make it look like Seth wasn't really paying attention. Then there's the infamous, like, you're not even going to let me have a sip of water? F you! Because there was someone else who came into the camp who Suzanne was like, I need to get this person water. And Seth apparently was the one who had gotten that water and had cooled it down. And so he wanted a drink because he was out hunting for a long period of time. And he's like, I need the water. And I will say, in my opinion, I think that Seth and Boulent made XL6 interesting, because every time we would go to the other groups, I'd be like, okay, where's Boulent? Where's Seth? And then we would get to Seth, and he would maybe be arguing with Suzanne, and then we would get to Boulent, and he'd be calling someone else broccoli, and then just having the bone thrown. And
broccoli is such a silly insult, you know?
Because she's a vegetarian. Her name is Broccoli now.
It's very like a boomer grandpa. Broccoli.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I can see that. And so those 2 kind of made it interesting. And there's a point where the 2 of them cross paths, and he's like, oh, is that the backside of a baboon? Oh, no, that's Seth.
Oh, no.
But they never really fought. But there's a point where I think Seth let Boulent use his bow and arrow, but Boulent wouldn't let Seth have some coals or something. And so it was like, but they never really fought at all. So it's just like, oh, that's interesting. And people are like, oh, Seth is a terrible hunter because his blind wasn't really covered and he was just sleeping in the sun all day. But apparently, and it's kind of unfortunate because Seth actually did end up getting an animal, successfully hunting it.
Yeah.
But because he had overexhausted himself and he was, I think, was getting heat exhaustion. And his nose started bleeding. He like couldn't get it, and he had to be medically tapped for the challenge because of heat exhaustion.
Oh, that sucks.
And heat stroke and stuff. But apparently he did successfully get the animal, and apparently it was given to one of the villages.
Okay.
So, and it's just like, oh, right when he has his success, he's removed from the challenge, and it's like, well, maybe he can get that one more chance at redemption, but I don't know. Okay, and now we move on to Jeff. Don't worry, we only have 3 more people to talk about that are controversial.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, and then maybe I should skip to the people who are arrested.
Oh, wait. What? Okay.
Yeah, some of the survivalists were arrested. One of whom was arrested right after they got back from an XL challenge for insurance fraud.
Oh.
But I feel like I should talk about something more positive, but no, just gonna be arrested. Who was arrested? And then, speaking of controversial survivalists, we have Jeff, who I was talking about, was in XL8, brought in, caused some drama, then left. And his controversy mainly comes in on XL5, where he and Laura had a 60-day challenge, and basically he came up with the mantra, neighbors, not roommates, where basically he's like, this is our stuff, we're keeping this, you stay over there and have your stuff. And basically he and Laura had fishing hooks, and like none of the other survivalists had fishing hooks. I think they like made some, or they got some later on, but Jeff and Laura were able to fish successfully, and the other survivalists were like, hey, can we like trade for like a hook? And Jeff is like, no, I want to keep them for myself. And no, I think I'm going to keep that to myself, to quote Jurassic Park 3. Anyway, and there's a point where he and Laura catch a massive eel, and they're like cheering really loudly, and like the other survivalists are like right there listening to them. And apparently the other survivalists had tried to do fishing, but Jeff would set up his hooks like right above theirs. And so basically the edit showed Jeff to look like kind of a jerk. And Laura was kind of grouped in with him and was also kind of portrayed negatively in the edit. And so for that reason, that's why Laura isn't coming back. She's like, you know what? You edited me to be in a bad light because apparently they did share some food with the other survivalists. So she's like, I'm not playing your games anymore. I'm gonna just do my own thing.
Good for you. And you go do your thing.
And also another point was near the end of XL5, Jeff became ill and had to be taken in a makeshift stretcher to like a med tent to be looked after, and had to stay with them overnight, but was still allowed back in the challenge. And a lot of people are like, wait, that's not fair. They had to like look over him during the night. There are people who have been tapped for a lot less. And so people were like, that's really unfair for him to do that. And maybe there was some favoritism towards him so that he can complete the 60-day challenge. And then when they were getting extracted, some of the survivalists were like, yay, 40 days, because they were happy to complete that. And Jeff heard that and yelled even louder, 60 days. And the other survivalists were like, So yeah, he was kind of edited to look like a jerk in that. And do I believe it? Maybe.
You really never can tell, honestly.
Oh, and it's interesting because on his first challenge, he was like, I'm a Mormon, I'm religious, I'm not cuddling with anybody because I don't want to disrespect my wife in any way. Don't touch me, don't come near me, don't look at me. There was also a moment where he was so vindictive towards a lizard. He literally spent, I think, an hour bashing a rock to make a big enough hole so he can grab a lizard, bit it, and took its head in his mouth and ripped it off. And like was like, yeah, about it. And it was just like,
very cool way to go.
For a small lizard, you smashed a rock for that amount of time and then angrily bit its head off.
What the
and then later proceeded to overcook not one but 2 snakes. And if it wasn't for the second snake being pregnant, that he probably wouldn't have made it. And then he tried to make a smoker for the second snake that set their shelter on fire.
Oh jeez.
So it was just like, oh gosh.
Yo.
And then we have Sam, who I discussed earlier, who who was kicked out of her house when she was 17 years old, I believe, 16, 17, for being gay, and basically did not have a great time on Naked and Afraid, and was yelling at Joe and was like, oh, he's so stubborn, just like my father, and my father kicked me out and I had to survive, and he's not good at this, and I have to babysit a 40-year-old man. And she was basically like, so when are you going to tap? You're going to tap, right? You shouldn't be here. You should tap. You should leave. And then there was a point where Joe was like, you know what? I found a field of berries and I was considering not telling you just because we've been arguing so much. And she's like, wow, nice people don't do that. You are the worst person ever.
Gosh.
And first of all, I'm just like, why did Joe say that though?
Yeah.
But also I'm like, she's just being so mean, and she's like, you're a horrible person. You remind me of my father. You're so stubborn. I have to babysit you. This is the worst. I've had to survive in situations like this. And it's just like,
calm down, please.
And I'm just like, I'm sure something was happening mentally where she was just in fight or flight, where she's just like, I have to survive. This is a real survival experience, where it just became too real for her.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, they showed all the spiraling, and we're like, she's not that nice. And I'm just like,
yikes.
I don't know. I think the producers either were trying to be shady, or they're trying to be like, oh, Joe's really nice, and he'll find a way to get along at the detriment to his mental health. But
Poor Joe.
I don't know. I don't think that worked out really well. And now we have Gary, Legend Gary, if you will. Gary is another controversial survivalist who is kind of the scavenger of Naked and Afraid, who is on XL4, kind of helped fuel the fire to the hunters versus the gatherers, because there were I think 3 or 4 survivalists who would go out hunting pretty much every day for several days in a row, and those would be the hunters, and the gatherers would be the ones who would stay back at camp, who would pick vegetation for food, would stock the firewood, would get water and stuff like that. And the hunters weren't really yielding any results. And so the gatherers were just like, you're not pulling your weight. You don't say thank you. You need to be more appreciative of us. You look down on us. How dare you? And then Gary, oh my God, he found I think it was a kudu head or an animal head that he basically cooked up, and it was so gross. And he basically, like, near the camp, he had all that.
Teacher, what is it? What is a kudu?
It's like an antelope-looking animal.
Okay.
Basically, he found an antelope, an impala, one of those heads, and he like ate the meat, but it messed with his stomach, and he did it near the camp. And so they're like, oh, and he's like, oh, I provided food for you, and you throw it back in my face. How dare you? And he and Matt Wright kind of had it out a little bit, where there was arguments, but apparently they forced a bromance on Stomping Ground, so that's good, according to Blair in her blog. But I believe it, that they kind of forced a bromance and there was some tension there. But I suggest everyone watch XL4, because that was the controversial one. But luckily, Matt ended up getting a I think an impala, and then there was another hunter who ended up getting a warthog.
Ooh.
So, and they caught him at the same time, conveniently, like 3 days before extraction.
Oh my God.
Oh, and that's another thing, because people are like, oh, they get this major protein when like a day or two before extraction. But actually, and people are like, oh, it's all planned because it keeps happening. This pattern keeps repeating, and it's like, actually, no. They might score a protein win, but it doesn't happen near extraction. It's edited to look like it's near extraction, but it might have happened like a few days previously, but they make it look like it's a last minute thing.
I got you.
And it's just like, oh, a random snake a day before extraction, or a piglet a day before extraction, because Waz on his initial challenge found like a baby boar and got it, and it was on day 20, but it's like, was it on day 20?
You never know.
You never know.
You can't trust the edit, guys.
Exactly. Never trust the edit.
Okay, we are still recording.
Yay. Everything's working okay?
Looks like it.
Yay. And then also, Gary is known for on XL7 putting alligator eyes on his eyes and getting sick with an unknown illness and having to tap for the challenge.
Bro.
Gary's mantra is consume as little as possible. And what he means by that is like using every part of a resource. And so he eats the part that you might not, he eats the part of the animal that you might not want to eat, but he's like, hey, it's edible, I'll eat it. And he ended up putting alligator eyes on his eyes.
Wonderful.
And then on he had to be med tapped on day 2 of XL8 because he was chopping a tree with poisonous sap, and he knew he was chopping a tree with poisonous sap.
Oh,
and
no.
He ended up getting in his eye and had to leave the challenge.
Oh, no.
It's like, oh.
That's rough, dude.
Yep. Oh, gosh. And I still have, like, crazy edits and revelations. The person who had to get tapped because they were threatening the life of their partner because she and her partner were arguing, and it got a little bit extreme and stuff like that. Crazy moments, people getting, oh my gosh, I have way too much stuff.
All right, go to the arrests. I want to hear about.
Okay, the
arrest.
I'm skipping to the arrest.
And like, okay, I'll save my questions for later.
Okay, I'll do the arrested. You can ask questions, and then it's just like I can save these notes for maybe another time, or just be like, it's good, everything's fine.
Yeah. Whichever you feel like.
Yeah, I mean, I can keep them so we can have like a part 3 and 4 because I feel like this has been, it's been a lot. I did too much, but I'd rather do too much than too little, I guess.
Yeah, I really appreciate you doing. Everybody say thank you for doing the research for this.
And I'm sorry to all the survivalists out there who I did not mention, who wanted to be mentioned, or if I gave out incorrect information about. But the arrested survivalists. First, we have Matthew Alexander. According to TMZ, Matt Alexander, who survived 21 days on Naked and Afraid, is now accused of beating his girlfriend and holding her against her will in a car.
Trigger warning.
Oh, sorry. Warning.
You're good. Yes. I just was like, oh, shoot. Trigger warning. That kind of arrest.
Yeah. Was arrested in Louisiana on a warrant for domestic battery and false imprisonment after the deputies spoke with his girlfriend about an alleged fight she and Matt had last Sunday. They were driving and he hit her and allegedly held her in the car for 40 minutes. She told deputies and he was arrested. He's since been released after posting a $3,500 bond. And so that's it on that. And this happened, I think, in 2016, 2018.
Okay.
And also, trigger and content warning for this one. Brandon Pope, according to TMZ, Naked and Afraid star Brandon Pope won't be... or this is according to the article, he won't be naked. He has a new jumpsuit, but he has a reason to be afraid. After cops nabbed him for allegedly spying on a bathing family member, law enforcement...
Oh, no.
Yep. Law enforcement sources tell TMZ Pope was busted in Arkansas after he was accused of spying on a teenage family member who was taking a bath in his house. We're told someone inside the house called the cops, and Pope was ultimately arrested earlier this month on one felony count of voyeurism.
Fuck that guy.
Bond set at $500,000 and as of 10/20/2020 is still behind bars. On his Naked and Afraid episode, someone started a fire that spread across the mountainside that they were filming on. Production had to step in to restore order.
Huh. That's a weird thing for them to add.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, remember that happened?
Somebody had a word count minimum to meet, and we're just like, quick, throw in something about when he was on the show.
They set a countryside on fire. And now we're here with Jeff Zouch, the controversial Jeff, who was, according to Fox 8, WGHP, Local News 8, and the Spokesman Review, I looked up many sources to make sure this was accurate. In Idaho, Jeff Zouch, a reality star from Discovery Channel's Naked and Afraid XL, has been sentenced for one count of insurance fraud. Idaho Attorney General Lawrence Wasden announced Monday, October 19th, the 28-year-old Pocatello native pleaded guilty to the felony charge on Tuesday, September 8th. By pleading guilty, Zouch admitted he knowingly provided a false statement to his insurance company regarding the date of an automobile accident, according to a news release. He was ordered to perform 100 hours of community service. He has been placed on probation for 3 years. He must also pay Geico Insurance $376 in restitution and pay a $1,250 fine.
Wow.
The Attorney General's office said Zouch wrecked his vehicle February 3rd, 2014. An off-duty Idaho State Police officer called in the wreck. A Bannock County Sheriff's deputy responded and identified Zouch as the driver. He had his vehicle towed to his home the same day, according to news releases. Authorities say Zausch called his insurance company, Geico, on February 4th to change his policy from liability to full coverage. Or liability only to full coverage. 16 days after the accident, the reality star added full coverage insurance to his vehicle. Zausch then contacted his insurance carrier to report he was involved in an accident on February 18th and filed a claim. When filing the claim, Zausch said law enforcement did not respond to the accident. The Geico Special Investigative Unit referred the matter to the Idaho Department of Insurance Fraud Investigation Unit. It was prosecuted by Deputy Attorney General Kendall McDevitt. So basically, he got into an accident, changed his policy, I guess, to get a little bit more money out of it, or to save some money, and ended up getting caught.
You don't fuck with the insurance companies.
Yeah, it's like Al Capone and the IRS.
Yeah.
It's like after he did what he did, and I remember the Joker on one of the Batman animated series is like, "Oh, Batman I can deal with, but you do not mess with the IRS. They will find you."
You're right.
And finally, we have Sam, who I talked about earlier, was on the episode with Joe, and she wasn't very nice to him.
Oh.
And I used Reddit to find this, but it kind of linked to an article, so this is all alleged, but I believe this is what happened. Let's see. Use Reddit because site I looked at had a paywall. According to Oldham Era, a woman who unsuccessfully ran against Kentucky Speaker of the House David Osborne in the 2018 election has been accused of stealing clients' money and supplies from Pampered Pup Salon in LaGrange.
Oh boy.
The LaGrange Police Department cited Samantha Gerges, who ran for state representative of District 59 as an independent, and her wife Ashley Gilbert, both 28 years old, on May 21st. I accidentally skipped on my phone. My bad. I am currently scrolling. This is very embarrassing.
How dare you scroll?
Sorry. Both 20. The pair is charged with first-degree unlawful access to a computer, theft by unlawful taking or disposition, $500 or more but less than $10,000, and theft by deception under $10,000.
Oof.
And now we have investigated survivalists. And I thought I'd bring this up because it kind of connects, or it leads to a shout out of another podcast, which I follow. It has an interesting story. It involves Passover, not the investigated survivalists, but everyone will find out in a second. Investigated survivalists. Gary Golding, who consume as little as possible, very controversial. This incident actually led to some of his fellow survivalists asking Discovery to say, or to ask them to not let Gary be on any more challenges.
Oh, wow.
Gary Golding ate an unalive baby dolphin in late 2019 or early 2020 because the article came out in January 17, 2020. And Gary's like, the way I copy pasted, it's like, well, Gary, that's because it's illegal. According to Orange County Register, the Laguna Beach Lifeguards, and the law enforcement branch of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, are investigating whether his poorly advised, partially decomposed lunch was in violation of the Marine Mammal Protection Act.
Yeah.
One of the reasons that we ask people to report strainings of marine animals is so that we have the chance to examine and learn from them, understand why they passed, and what that may mean for the population. NOAA spokesperson Michael Milstein told the outlet, "We lost the chance if they are butchered on the beach." The Marine Mammal Protection Act, which went into effect in 1972, established that it is illegal to take any marine mammal, including cetaceans like whales, dolphins, and porpoises, within the United States. Any violation of the act could result in fines up to $28,520 per incident of taking a stranded animal, or up to a year in prison. Although Milstein is too professional to use the word freaking gross, he did add that eating a unalive dolphin probably isn't the safest thing to do. People have gotten ill and died from botulism, a rare poisoning caused by toxins produced by Clostridium botulinum bacteria after eating marine mammals. He said, "It can be difficult to tell how long an animal may have been dead and lying on the beach. Marine mammals can also hold contaminants such as toxins from harmful algal blooms." On an unverified Twitter account, Golding posted 2 tweets claiming that he had no idea that he couldn't grill and eat an unalive dolphin. I would never touch or harm a living dolphin in or out of a protected area, and I would never condone anyone harming any marine animal ever. This is absolutely not acceptable behavior, he wrote. Educational opportunity. I never knew you can pick up dead animals off the beach. Do not ever do it. Do not ever do it. I would never harm marine mammal, and I never have. Apparently, some of the survivalists have tried to keep Gary Golding from being on Naked and Afraid again due to the incident. So yeah, he ate a dead dolphin and broke an act.
Allegedly.
And also this goes into a plug for, so one of my dad's friend's daughters, or a friend of my dad's friend's friends knows someone who was invited to Passover because they're in Atlanta because she's studying marine biology and working at the Atlanta Aquarium. Her name is Michelle Greenfield, and she has a podcast called Aquadocs.
Ooh.
Aquadocs. The cover photo is basically a stethoscope in the shape of a dolphin.
Aww.
And she basically talks about marine animals. She talks about weighing them and the noises they make, and she basically interviews various marine biologists about their experiences dealing with seals or dolphins. And there's an interesting story about a doctor who performed orthopedic surgery on a bullfrog.
No.
And some scientists learning about the emotions of dolphins based on the sounds that they make. And
Sorry, Spencer.
You
don't know what's happening, Spencer.
But as I was talking about, please check out Aquadocs by Michelle Greenfield. I met her at Passover. She's very nice. She loves marine animals, just like Gary does in his belly. But
allegedly.
So now, moving on, we are on our final segment, the How Do I Get on Naked and Afraid segment. If you want to know, go to Metal Flowers Media. I believe they have a website, and you can also follow them on Instagram. Just type in Metal Flowers Media and it should pop up, and you should be able to have a convenient link to applications of various TV shows, and one of them's Naked and Afraid. And I remember some of the survivalists talking about, you have 5 seconds to grab the casting people's attention. Do something to stand out and be yourself.
Woo! What if you could go on any reality show, what would it be?
Me?
Yeah, like if like we get big enough doing this podcast, and it's like, that Gabe guy really loves reality TV, and reality TV shows start knocking on your door being like, Gabe, come on our show, come on Love Island, come do this. What show? I know for a fact it isn't Love Island.
Definitely. None of the dating shows, though, so that knocks out a good chunk of them.
Yeah, that gets rid of a good bit of them.
Definitely not Naked and Afraid, not Love is Blind, after our previous podcast about it. I would maybe The Amazing Race, or somewhere where I would travel to another location, whether it be doing challenges, I don't know. It depends on the situation. I like the idea of like being in a house and interacting with people, but I also don't like that being an introvert. So I'll just say Amazing Race as of right now, or Buddy Games, because that looks interesting. But I don't want to look too stupid.
I would go on Amazing Race too. I think that would be mine. Just because I would like to be able to be like, we went to all these cool places. Even if it's not like a very like, it's definitely not a like leisurely experience. You're running around. I still would want to do it.
Oh gosh, let's just hope we get a really nice European country for the first stop and are able to be like, oh, this is nice, and then maybe after we're eliminated we can explore more. Because I know in America's Next Top Model, sometimes the eliminated contestants were able to explore the sites off camera, and so. Okay, so how to see your favorites return to Naked and Afraid if you want to. You can go to Discovery, Corporate, or Renegade, and I have links. But if you can probably type in like Discovery request form, and it'll be like, make your request, and you add your email address, your subject, and then give notes like, I want Joe Ortlip to return, because that's his last name, Ortlip, the Joe we like, who wants his redemption and recently came full circle and was able to find his birth mother and all that jazz. So you could say, we want Joe Ortliff back. Or we want Tara to come back because we love Tara. We want Jamie to come back because he's awesome and he survived Ecuador when he really shouldn't have, but he did. We want Christopher James, the Knot Master. The not the Knot Master. And it's like N-O-T, N-O-T, the K-N-O-T Master. I'm sure Spencer probably will put that up on screen, or he'll just put a no in the corner that flashes.
Sorry, Spencer.
Sorry, Spencer. And then you can also contact Renegade. I think you can type in like Renegade 83 contact, and hopefully something will pop up. You just have to enter your like name, email, and like, I want this person to come back. And some other people who I think should come back is one of the contestants from or Survivalists from season 15, Michael. Or he talked about this on the podcast, but I'll mention it now. Michael, on his episode, he was in the Cold Front he was in the Kalahari Cold Front episode of season 15, where basically he's stuck with someone who has been described as a reality TV show wannabe, and pretty much everything his partner tried to eat, she had a reaction to, and he would have to like coach her through eating it every single time, and so he also he ended up getting tick bite fever.
Oh no.
And so like after he unfortunately tapped on day 14, he had to be taken to the hospital because he had a fever.
Oh no.
And also he said on a podcast that his longtime girlfriend of several years, I want to say 12 or 14 years, they were together for a long time. She broke up with him like the day before he went on the challenge. So he was mentally not really there.
Poor dude.
And then, he was having to his mental health was in question. He was having to support his partner. They were surrounded by lions. There was one night where a rhinoceros stuck its head into their boma.
Oh no.
And I think they swat at it or tried to, they were able to get rid of it. But every night having an animal like surrounding your boma, and then every single night, it's called Kalahari Cold Front because like every night it got dropped down to like 30 to 50 degrees at night. And it wasn't until like I think around near the end of the first week where they're like, here's this flimsy impala skin to blanket to help you survive. And so it was just a lot after a lot after a lot, and he's just like, you know what, I'm done. She ended up making it through because I didn't say this, Malou said this on Oh Heck Nah. She said that he basically helped her get through because he was the one doing all the heavy lifting at the front side of the challenge, and he found bone marrow for her, so she was able to like get some nutrients, and then they had a lot of successful traps and all that jazz. And there was like a moment where she caught a bird, but she let it go. But then earlier Michael caught a bird and he was just like, I'm really sorry, but I have to do this. And apparently it bit his finger. And so that's why it was able to get away, and not it just got away because he was taking so long apologizing to it kind of thing. So that was sad, but he should come back. And then there is a survivalist by the name of Kel Michelle, Kel Michelle, who apparently survived the majority of her challenge by herself and really wants to go back to show her skills, but she might have accidentally pissed off production.
Oh no! What did she do?
I can't. I remember. I think I posted it earlier or in my notes, but I think she said something about Naked and Afraid, and she might have said something in anger about production or just the way she was treated, or not being able to go back yet. But she hasn't been asked back, and it's like, oh, but she's been very successful. She was very successful. And then also you can ask Seth Reese to return, even though he's controversial. He wants it. He just needs a good PR person. He can do it. And then also you can ask for the Largados y Palados / Supervivencia al Desnudo Survivalists to go back. Yeah, just any of them. Just say any of them. I'm sure any of them would like it. A lot of them really want to do a 40-day challenge, so I say let them. And I'm sure you can Google like Discovery submit a request, or Discovery Corporate submit a request, and all that. And with that, if I got anything wrong, Survivalists, please tell me. I have a lot more, but I think this is the point where I put down my notes and I ask Avery, do you have any final questions?
No, I actually, I didn't know there was this much of an iceberg with this show, which is kind of great. I did not know that this show had such a, dedicated following. I love when shows have a very, cult following.
Exactly. And I and I kind of tried to ask the fans of Naked and Afraid and Excel Facebook page, like, hey, I'm gonna do a podcast. If you have any controversial moments, please let them below in case I forget. And I think the algorithm just did not want it.
Oh,
Like in 8 hours, like I don't think anyone thought it wasn't liked. No one commented. And I'm just like, I feel dumb, but that,
don't feel dumb.
and I'm just like, oh no. But hopefully, and the survivalists who are on the pages are super nice, very down to earth. They send out autographs to people. I think you can go to their Instagrams and either message them or go to their personal pages that they have. And please make sure to support them and don't send hate to anybody. I know I was lightly shady, but I'm an ignorant fool who has never experienced this. I'm only basing my opinion off the edit, but maybe I'll discuss some of it later if you all want me to, or I'll just, if I'm just like, Avery, please don't do any research this week. I have some stuff to talk about, and I'll ask her politely, and we'll see what happens.
Nice. Well, thank you for doing the research, because Gabe's been dealing with the research side of things the past 3 weeks. This looks like a hat currently. It's going to be a blanket, but it's too small. There
should be a picture of Perry wearing the mini hat.
Yes. It's also rainbow. It looks a lot less rainbow on this camera than it is in real life. I swear it's like a nice transitioning rainbow from one color to the next on this camera over here. Oh, you can kind of see it on this camera a little bit better.
Orange to pink to purple.
On this camera, it just looks orange to purple, which is not a bad look. I'm just like, that's a strange look. But yeah, you've done the research side for the past 3 weeks, so thank you for that.
Yeah, most of it, I'm just like, oh, I remember hearing some things, and this is what I remember. Avery's just like, I have very detailed notes, and I got this, and I'm just like, I think this is what happened. So again, if any survivalists wanna, if anyone wants to correct me, mainly the survivalists, because I don't know if or a producer of the show. If you're a producer of Naked and Afraid and you want to correct me on some things, feel free to DM me at ginger_Jew_fro on Instagram, and please be nice and don't send hate.
We are criers. Don't make us cry.
And I'm a very ugly crier. I'm not like Rachel McAdams in The Notebook.
Like a soap opera crying with the one tear. I'm so sad. My boyfriend is having a baby with my stepsister. That's a thing that happened on the soap opera that we're watching.
I feel like that's the least crazy thing to happen.
No, that's not the craziest thing to happen. You get into like passions, and I'm told it's supernatural, so there's all kinds of like straight up like vampires and stuff like that.
My first thought is Sam and Dean Winchester make a cameo.
Every time you said Impala during this episode, I was just picturing them hunting just like the 67 Impala, like the Chevy.
It's just, oh gosh, can you imagine them like with spears, like running, the cars like speeding through, and they're like, we got it cornered. And they're like throwing the spears, and the Impala's like, no.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was picturing, and I was like, my brain is so dumb. But yeah, I think we'll end it here. Thank you guys for listening or watching. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can follow me on YouTube at Avery Talks About Stuff. You can follow Gabe on YouTube at Gabriel Custic. Be sure to like, comment, rate, all that good stuff.
Rate, review, share.
That stuff.
Various medias.
And we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.